22,000 hectares were destroyed, an area larger than the size of Italy. Tragically, such incidences are becoming more prevalent, but there are many measures we can take to limit the suffering. Communities themselves can take steps to stop the fire coming close to their homes, and firefighters need more plentiful resources in terms of both manpower and equipment. We leave the final word to our fourth expert witness.
We have a saying, hit 'em hard, hit 'em fast, because if you can stop that fire, obviously, from continuing to grow, you can prevent these big mega fires. Once that fire is up, it doesn't matter how many aircraft you have, it doesn't matter how many firefighters you have on the ground. That fire is going to move, and it's going to move the way it wants to.
This inquiry was presented by me, Tanya Beckett, produced by Louise Clark, and researched by Anushka Mutanda-Doughty. The editor was Tara McDermott, and it was mixed by Cameron Ward.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Well, good morning from America. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio Live in West Fargo. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Thank you wherever you're joining us for this morning. We have a lot to talk about. Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. CBC News projected the win for Trump late last night. He secured 276 electoral votes. We've yet to hear from Kamala Harris. We expect she will speak today. And so here in North Dakota, overwhelmingly, this state, the people in this state did vote for Donald Trump. This morning, we're going to hear a little bit more about why, their reaction to the results, and of course, as always, a Manitoba perspective on it all because, well, we're Canadian. So let's find out more about what this will mean for trade, for immigration, for tourism. But we will start by hearing from what happened here last night. We're in West Fargo, and of course we were out and about in Fargo, and also we crossed over the state line into Moorhead yesterday, into Minnesota. So we have a big show coming up for you today, and we thank you for joining us wherever you are joining us from. Corey Funk is here in the States with me. I want to say good morning to Kevin Ipatebo, to Abby Adeyemi, and Leif Larson, who's also in this morning, as well as Heather Wells, who's here with the actual news headlines beyond this, or maybe in addition to this. Heather, good morning.
Good morning. Yes, the presidential election went very differently for Manitoba's two closest American neighbors. Democrat Kamala Harris held a slight edge for much of the night in Minnesota. That wasn't the case, though, in North Dakota, where you are, Marcy, and we'll hear more about that throughout the morning here. And in this province, it's getting close to that time of year. Brandon Westman Christmas Cheer says they don't have room for all their holiday hamper requests. What are they now hoping will happen to assist? We'll hear that in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, right now it's 1 minute to 6. We'll get important analysis coming up on World Report of the developments here in the States last night. For those of you that might be listening within earshot here, that can drive, I should say, within driving distance, we're at Randy's Diner 2 in West Fargo. Big thanks to Heidi Rogenkamp, who has set us up here for a busy morning. We've already been talking to folks who voted here. Here's the staff list of some words that they feel about the result today. Relieved, ecstatic, disappointed, enlightened, and hopeful. Much more coming from the States. Stay with us.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
Jason Reynolds is one of the biggest names in YA fiction. His books take difficult subjects and makes them accessible to kids. Jason Reynolds joins me to talk about the trip to a juvenile detention center that inspired his new book and writing the stories he wishes he had when he was growing up.
And that if I had these books, perhaps they would have been a little less posturing and a little less lying.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
In Toronto.
And I'm John Northcott, outside the State Capitol building in Georgia.
This is a special edition of World Report. Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States of America.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
Trump addressing his supporters at the Palm Beach County Convention Center early this morning. He was surrounded by family on the stage. Trump and the Republican Party have secured 276 electoral votes, 223 votes have gone to Kamala Harris and the Democrats.
Wisconsin is the state that tipped Trump over the top. He also won other key swing states, including Pennsylvania and the state of Georgia, where I am this morning. CBC's Chris Reyes has more on this historic win.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
Walking on stage to his signature song, a crowd of thousands at the West Palm Beach Convention Center went wild as Donald Trump claimed victory.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country and maybe beyond.
Trump skipped the insults and the name-calling that's become a signature of his campaign speeches. Instead, he made grand promises.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
On stage, Trump was joined by his entire family, including his wife, his 5 children, and his running mate, J.D. Vance.
After the greatest political comeback in American history, we're going to lead the greatest economic comeback in American history under Donald Trump's leadership.
Earning Trump the biggest applause when he gave credit to God for his big win.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together.
Trump closed his speech by calling on all Americans to join his movement. He did not make a single mention of his opponent, Kamala Harris. Chris Reyes, CBC News, West Palm Beach, Florida.
And for the first time in 4 years, the Republicans have taken over the U.S. Senate. It's another feather in the cap of Donald Trump. Control over the House of Representatives is still up in the air. If the Republicans win both the Senate and the House, it could give Donald Trump, the GOP, untethered power. It would allow Trump to pursue his priority policies with the majority already in hand. It would also allow him to appoint the next Supreme Court justices. Kamala Harris was unable to keep some key states blue. She also underperformed in many swing states. Harris's campaign says she will likely address the American people today as she concedes defeat to Donald Trump. Last night, a large rally was held at Harris's alma mater in Washington, D.C. The CBC's Ashley Burke joins us now from Washington. Ashley, what went wrong for the Harris campaign?
Well, Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign poured huge amounts of money into ads. They aggressively held rallies in battleground states, and they brought in so much star power to help, from Beyonce to Oprah and Lady Gaga, and it wasn't enough. In her closing pitch to voters, Harris offered them a new generation of leadership free of Donald Trump's divisive style of politics, and the majority of voters rejected that. It seems that the overwhelming issue voters cared about the most in this election is the economy, the cost of living, and they think Trump is going to make that better for them. Now, it appears Harris also failed to resonate with certain pockets of voters, specifically male voters, and she failed to distance herself from Joe Biden, whose administration has been a target of Trump's campaign when it comes to the economy.
Ashley, those are the overall opinions. What specifically are we hearing from voters?
I'm at Howard University right now, where we were at Harris's campaign watch party last night. You know, it started off as this really energetic event. There were hundreds of students here singing and dancing. They were really optimistic that Harris could make history as one of the first graduates of a historically black college or university to become president. But then as the results started coming in and Trump started taking the lead in many states, the crowd started getting nervous and anxious. And slowly over time, we just saw people lose hope.
All we can do is vote and pray for a change. I think we're going backwards.
For what she stands for and what she's done for us, I think, it speaks volumes.
I guess it kind of just shows me that some people are willing to look at the facts and not face them.
Now we're waiting to see if Harris has called Trump to congratulate him and when she's going to speak this morning and what exactly her message is going to be.
The CBC's Ashley Burke in Washington, D.C. Thanks, Ashley.
You're welcome.
Harris and the Democratic Party had their eye on the swing state of Pennsylvania. It is the battleground of battlegrounds with 19 electoral votes. This time, those coveted seats turned red. Steve Futterman has more from Philadelphia.
The early vote count had Kamala Harris on top, but that was expected. The first votes counted came from early voting, which favored Harris. Soon it became apparent, though, that the Keystone State, which went for Trump in 2016, then went for Joe Biden in 2020, was moving again in Trump's direction. Early this morning, Fox News became the first U.S. network to call the race for Trump.
Is this a call, ladies and gentlemen? We are now projecting that Donald J. Trump will win the state of Pennsylvania, and thereby he is on his way to becoming the 47th president.
At Trump headquarters in Florida, where they were watching the Fox broadcast, there was suddenly a huge roar.
As we look now at
all across the state, Trump improved on his 2020 performance. A key factor was an increase in support among Latino voters. This man we spoke with on Sunday typified Latinos moving towards Trump. He said it was largely because of the economy. Have you ever voted for a Republican?
Right now, it's going to be the first time I'm voting for one.
But you voted for Obama?
I did.
Voted for Hillary Clinton?
Yes.
And voted for Joe Biden?
Yes.
Once again, Pennsylvania helps pave the way to the White House. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Philadelphia.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau will meet with his Liberal caucus this morning. They will be focused on the results of the U.S. election and the path forward when dealing with President Donald Trump. For more, let's go to Janice McGregor in our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, this is all something Trudeau's cabinet has experience with.
That's right, Marcia. Look, in 2016, the election of Donald Trump threw Justin Trudeau's cabinet off guard. Not this time. Chrystia Freeland was out earlier this week reassuring Canadians that they've maintained good relationships on both sides of the aisle in Washington. She was dining with her former and perhaps again counterpart, Bob Lighthizer, earlier this year. Melanie Joly also told us yesterday she's been talking to other foreign ministers, preparing to coordinate their response to the change. And listen to the way Innovation Minister François-Philippe Champagne was describing Canada-U.S. relations yesterday.
What we've been focusing on is moving from just like the friendly neighbor of the North to a strategic partner.
But being a good partner in Donald Trump's world all comes down to deal making. International trade lawyer Mark Warner, who practices on both sides of the border, told me he thinks the key for Canada is seeing this relationship as transactional.
If we treat this as a negotiation and where you barter some back, I think he's manageable.
So in this second Trump presidency, what will he want to negotiate?
This guy's priorities have not changed. He's obsessed with the border, immigration issues. Militarily, he will not tolerate free riders. If allies want protection, they're going to have to pull their weight. And his industrial policy is set to once again go after China, everything focused on bringing jobs back to America, regardless of what the economists say about the potential cost to the North American economy of levying big new tariffs. Todd Tucker, the Director for Industrial Policy and Trade with Roosevelt Forward in Washington, warns that Canada should expect a hostile reaction if it's not prepared to get in line.
So I think the administration is going to use the possibility of a USMCA renegotiation to weaponize any of these issues and to sort of put negotiating partners on the back foot.
When trade wars escalate, it creates exactly the kind of uncertainty that businesses hate. It holds back investment, holds back growth. But weaponized uncertainty is Trump's superpower. That's where his leverage comes from.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa.
And before we go, Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. He has won 276 Electoral College votes. The Democrats sit at 223, in some states still counting. The Republicans took key swing states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and the state of Georgia, where I am this morning. That is the latest news from World Report. I'm John Northcott from outside the State Capitol building in Atlanta, Georgia.
And I'm Marcia Young in Toronto. This is CBC News.
Lovely. I love that. That's
I'm a never
great mix,
Trumper.
I think.
Wouldn't vote
Yes.
for him if he's the only one on the ballot. I don't believe in anything he stands for.
You know, we're neighbors, obviously,
Okay.
which is why we're down here covering your election. We're just interested in what's going to go on. What's the mood been like down here in terms of talking to friends, family, neighbors? What's that been like?
Well, it's okay. I mean, I have family that are very Republican. It wouldn't matter who ran. As long as there's an R behind their name, that's who they're choosing. So we just choose not to discuss it. They won't change my mind. I won't change theirs, so why bother?
Well, that's one of the folks we were talking to yesterday. Well, this morning, though, she's going to have to figure out how to understand Donald Trump because, as you heard, he will be the 47th president of the United States. What's interesting, though, about that North Dakota voter is there are a lot of people here where we are in Fargo and this morning in West Fargo who are saying they're not sure how everyone's going to move forward together. Maybe carefully, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're also, though, going to hear from people who are using words this morning like ecstatic and relieved and enlightened by Trump's re-election last night in this country. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in West Fargo. We're down in the States on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. We're at Randy's Diner, too, and we have lots coming up for you. So stay tuned. Somehow I've even convinced a live guest already to come on the air with us in just moments. As well, I just want to mention that this hour, we're going to also hear the Manitoba perspective on the U.S. election and the results last night and the results as they continue to trickle in the wee hours of the morning. We're going to hear more about why Winnipeggers specifically are so invested in this U.S. election and what happened here. Last night, one of our reporters went to a watch party with Winnipeggers to find out. So we're going to hear more about that. So stay tuned. Right now, though, let's go for the headlines to Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, Republicans in North Dakota had reason for optimism last night. People who spoke with CBC at GOP headquarters in Fargo were feeling good about their chances. Ken Tanner says he could see signs of a Trump victory. He says people have been getting braver about visibly supporting Trump. So we'll hear more about that. And here in Winnipeg, remembering a 28-year-old mother of four, family and friends of Brianna Close gathered in a vigil last night on the promenade behind Portage Place, the downtown mall, where she was found with life-threatening injuries. She later died in hospital. We're going to hear how the young mother is being remembered. That's coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, I'm not sure what we're in for in the weather today, Abby. I can tell you that here in Fargo, I woke up and it was better than it has been. The last couple of days, it's been wet. You could see your breath. What's it like back at home?
We have foggy conditions, actually, this part of the province. Across the province, we're going to see cloudy skies and chilly temperatures, snow in the north, and then foggy conditions in the south. Winnipeg, we're seeing this freezing fog this morning, and we also have a fog advisory in effect affecting the southern part of Manitoba, where we're seeing thick fog, reducing visibility. So if you're driving this morning, be very cautious as visibility may suddenly drop. And watch out for deer and also slippery bridges and roads. So you need to take care as you commute this morning. Though we're heading for a high of 3 degrees today, and for the southern part of the province, that's what we'll see. Mostly this fog will be lifting as we get into the morning. You see anything during your commute, feel free to give me a call, 788-3093, and look out for slippery roads.
So let's hear now, just for a couple of minutes before we turn to our first West Fargo and North Dakota voter here with us live in Randy's Diner, rather. Donald Trump, let's hear from him. He will be the 47th president of the United States. He was speaking early this morning from headquarters in West Palm Beach, Florida. We heard some of this on World Report, but here's a bit more of what he had to say.
Incredible movement. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly. We're going to fix our borders. We're going to fix everything about our country. And we made history for a reason tonight, and the reason is going to be just that. We overcame obstacles that nobody thought possible, and it is now clear that we've achieved the most incredible political thing. Look what happened. Is this crazy? But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. And every citizen, I will fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day, I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again. Oh, we're gonna
in the wee hours of the morning. That is Republican candidate and the next incoming president-elect of the United States. Once again, Donald Trump speaking in Florida. We are asking on Facebook and asking you to call our listener lines this morning. What's on your mind as a Manitoban as you make sense of the U.S. election? 788-3205. But right now, let's talk to someone who cast a ballot here in North Dakota last night. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in West Fargo at Randy's Diner 2. And so is Todd McComb, who is sitting across from me and graciously agreed to go on air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why are you up this early? What are you doing?
Well, my son had hockey practice this morning at 6 a.m., so I figured, well, I'm going to get something to eat while we're down here.
Your word was relieved when I approached you off air and asked you what your thoughts were on last night's results in the election. Why relieved?
Well, there's a lot of things, I got young kids and stuff like that, and we want this country to be in a good position, economically. Crime has been a problem, and with my kids being so young, I definitely don't want them in some unnecessary war, so I don't know. My house is pretty conservative, but I'm just tired of having to talk about it all the time.
So there's a little relief that the vote has happened then too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You said your house is pretty conservative. You shared with me that you voted for Trump. You voted for the Republican Party. Tell me a little bit about something else you shared off air, because you said that you are hoping that the country will move forward together. I think you said.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But you said you're not sure that's possible.
I don't think so. It just seems like everything's so polarized, and people would rather fight it out than have a conversation about, what's the best idea. When you talk about the greatest thing against bad ideas is good ideas. Well, let's talk about what they are. They don't want to talk it out. They just rather fight.
Here in North Dakota, what hope do you have for moving forward in a more united way? Someone yesterday said to me, I think the quote, I'm not going to quote this exactly, but it's something to the effect of North Dakotans are, nice by nature. Is that still live here, or has some of the divisiveness crept into your state as well?
Well, it's getting there. I don't know where it's coming from, but it's coming, and we're kind of sheltered, especially like in Fargo. We don't economically, where stuff happens throughout the nation, we don't feel it here. So,
what were your biggest issues last night? You mentioned the economy, and I think you also said the border. So, what are you most looking forward to in terms of what Donald Trump and the Republican Party will change in this country?
Well, it's just don't let everybody in, because if they come in, they're not going to come back for their hearing. Well, some will. Well, they won't now because they're probably going to get deported anyway. But just do it the right way, and who knows who's coming in.
So you've been worried about immigration that comes in, people that cross the border and don't do it through the official channels.
Right. Yeah.
In terms of how you think that maybe we should view the results of last night, I know you mentioned that you get up to Manitoba time to time. You do some fishing in our beautiful province. How do you hope that the world and other countries maybe view the United States this morning?
Well, hopefully we're grown up enough where we can move forward and not be so divisive and stuff like that, and you know, there's a lot of business to be done, you know, throughout the world. Well, let's start doing it.
Thanks very much, Todd, for sitting down with us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
That is Todd McComb. He actually is in West Fargo this morning, but he lives in North Fargo. Got up early because parents can relate to this, right? His son had hockey practice. He has 3 children. They were 17, 14, and 12. They all watched the election last night as well, and he voted for Trump. Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. CBC made that projection for Trump early this morning. So what's on your mind as you're listening to us from here in Fargo and West Fargo this morning? As a Manitoban, what sense are you making of the U.S. election results? Please call us. We'll get your voices on air too. 788-3205.
Breaking this hour, CBC News brings you all the local, national, and international news you need to make sense of your world.
I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement.
Now's your chance to enjoy a free preview of Canada's source for breaking and live news.
The air raid sirens went off.
Find out why more Canadians choose CBC News Network over any other Canadian news channel. The CBC News Network free preview on now.
Temperature right now in Winnipeg is -1. Your high back home is 3 degrees. There's a fog advisory in effect for most of southern Manitoba. Thompson, -3, cloudy skies, high of -1 there in northern Manitoba. Well, as I mentioned, we're also going to be leaning in, of course, this morning to what you're thinking as you watched last night and as you are absorbing the results this morning from what happened in this election. A lot of people couldn't keep their eyes off it. But why? To hear more, we were out and about in Winnipeg last night. Members of the Canadian Public Relations Society watched the elections together. They were at One Great City Brew Pub last night in Winnipeg. While their interest in the PR of politics was what brought them together, President and Watch Party organizer Jennifer Palouk says for many of them, it is deeper than that. CBC's Chidi Akuma was at the party last night to find out why.
69% of the estimated voters they're really planning the ballots.
I think it's a wonderful opportunity to follow what has been a major news story in international affairs for the past several months as the events of leading up to the election have unfolded. As we know, the events of what happens in the U.S. is also going to have an impact on us here in Canada as our neighbors and one of our primary trading partners. And I mean, the impacts are just endless. So we thought it might be fun to get a group together to follow the results together instead of just watching them at home by ourselves on the couch. So we thought it'd be, just a fun opportunity to get people together. I think there's a lot of teachables in what we're seeing and hearing unfold with this election, and tonight is just a good opportunity to break some of that down together with our peers.
And when you say teachables, what exactly comes to mind?
Well, I think a really illustrative example is how things unfolded after the first debate between President Biden and Donald Trump, and how the Biden administration responded to that feedback and the reactions following that event, and how the Kamala Harris, Tim Walz's team really tried to change the narrative. From that point on, I think it was very much a turning point in this campaign, and it'll be interesting to see what unfolds tonight in terms of results. But I think that was a very pivotal moment in this particular election that's going to be remembered for a long time to come. And as a bunch of communications and PR nerds, it's kind of fun for us to dissect that together and talk about the missteps and what worked well, what we might have done a little differently.
Yeah, and I mean, this American election has been a crazy ride from the debate you were mentioning earlier to even just tonight. What do you think we can learn in our own election coming up from this American election?
I think what is most important is that Canadians are able to put their trust in the institutions that are meant to serve them. And I've always been interested in government and politics, even dating back to when I was a teenager. And it's because I care about how my political members represent my community and how that has greater impacts not only on the municipal level, but provincially, federally, and internationally. And I think that feeling so invested in the results of a particular campaign means that we care. And regardless of what the outcome is, what is most important is how to move forward from that point on. And I think the number one thing that is most important in any election campaign is trust. And unfortunately, that's been tested a lot in this American election. And I think we're seeing the results of that with some people abstaining from voting altogether. They've just become really disenfranchised with their institutions. And I really, really sincerely hope that we never reach that level of pessimism here in Canada.
Why do you think Winnipeggers care so much about this election?
I think as a community, we have a lot of, even though Winnipeg is a relatively small city compared to other Canadian cities, we have an amazing community when it comes to giving back to our communities. And so when you have that level of volunteerism and community engagement and people who care about where they live and where they work, then naturally you're going to feel invested in the major world events that could have an impact on those things. And so I think there is an inclination here in Winnipeg to be a little bit more invested in what happens in politics, not only here in our province, but all city in our province, but also with our closest neighbors to the south, the U.S.
So that was CBC's Chidi Akuma speaking with the Canadian Public Relations Society president at a watch party last night. She also spoke to watch party organizer Jennifer Palouk last night in Winnipeg about why you may have watched, not just in Winnipeg, of course, but from Canada and from Manitoba. So if you did stay up into the wee hours of the night, why? What's at stake for you, do you think, as a Canadian and Manitoban? What things are you thinking about? How will the result last night affect your behavior or not? I know that we had some wonderful coverage leading up to this before Election Day here down south. We're in Fargo this morning, West Fargo, and there was a lot of talk about three big issues, and they were trade, immigration, and tourism. So from a Manitoba perspective, I know I grew up coming down to Grand Forks and Fargo each and every spring break. I don't know about you. I know I watch the value of the dollar between our two nations. I understand that we have factories and businesses that do not only business here, but some are located in the States. I'm thinking about New Flyer, of course, the bus builder. We have a border that we share, the longest border that is shared. And so what does that mean for immigration? As Donald Trump has said, one of his promises has been history making, the largest deportation ever that has happened in modern history in this country. And so what will that mean for Canada? What's the impact of that? And then so trade, tourism, and immigration. And let's not forget about that 10% tariff that he's talked about putting on goods. So there are lots of things that will affect Canadians and, of course, Manitobans. So what are you thinking this morning, Manitoba? Call us. We've got to get your voices on the air. 788-3205. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live. We're down in West Fargo this morning at Randy's Diner 2, right behind us. You can't hear them because they're way across the restaurant, but a whole hockey team just came in. They had an early morning game, I think, maybe, or else they're off to the rink. But we're going to try to get some of them on the air as well as we continue our coverage here. In addition to our live coverage, we also are going to get some analysis of what happened last night. So that's after the news. We're going to hear more about, with a political watcher, about the latest and where America goes from here. In addition, at 10 to 7 this morning, I mentioned I'm down here with Corey Funk, and Corey and I were at polling stations yesterday. We also crossed into Minnesota, and if you've been down to Fargo, then you know it's a short drive, really, over a couple of streets, and all of a sudden you're in Moorhead. You're in a different state, and they supported a different presidential candidate last night. And so what were people at the polling station saying there? That's all still ahead. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, we're waking up in a fog in Winnipeg. This fog expected to dissipate later this morning. Right now it's -1. It's going to be a cool one, a high today of 3. Donald Trump has officially reclaimed the White House. CBC News has declared Trump is the winner of last night's election and will become the 47th U.S. president. The Republican candidate garnered 276 electoral votes, outdistancing Democratic candidate Kamala Harris. 270 were needed for victory. Trump declared himself the winner early this morning.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again.
Trump's Republican Party also winning a majority in the Senate, reclaiming the House from the Democrats, which they lost in 2020. Now, world leaders are starting to react to the results of the U.S. election. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban congratulating Donald Trump, calling it a much-needed victory for the world. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu calls it history's greatest comeback. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says he looks forward to working with Trump in the years ahead. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky calls it an impressive election victory. Meanwhile, the Kremlin says it won't comment on internal U.S. matters, but adds it did not meddle in the U.S. election. Now, the election went very differently for Manitoba's two closest American neighbors. Democrat Kamala Harris held on to Minnesota, winning in Minnesota. But Republican candidate Trump cruising to an easy win in North Dakota. That was good news for Larry Weil and other GOP supporters gathered in Fargo.
We know that the country has been very polarized, and of course, we look at real fundamental issues and values, family, God, country, and so on. And so we're hopeful that our country will be heading in the right direction.
And we'll be bringing you more from Fargo throughout the morning right here on Information Radio. And you can hear the latest on the U.S. election and Donald Trump's win, as well as other national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Remembering a 28-year-old mother of 4. Family and friends of Brianna Close raising their voices in a vigil last night. They gathered downtown on the promenade behind Portage Place. Close was found there suffering from life-threatening injuries on the afternoon of October 31st, last Thursday. She died later in hospital. Cassandra Flett is the paternal aunt of one of Close's sons. She says the former healthcare aide was kind, generous, and dreamed of traveling with her children.
Her cheeky smile that she always had and the glint in her eyes, and I see that in her son every day, and the teasing nature, and it's definitely something that we're going to miss.
32-year-old Ryan John Kennedy has been charged with second-degree murder. The Brandon Westman Christmas Cheer says it does not have enough space for all the hamper requests they're getting this year. They expect to pack a record of at least 1,500 holiday hampers, but their headquarters can only hold 1,100. Volunteer Cynthia Wright says they hope the Adopt a Family program will get the rest filled.
Where the bridge that we need to gap is the actual physical hampers getting prepared and delivered to families by community groups outside of the 1,100 that we can do ourselves. So yeah, that's really our need, and that's where we push.
Wright says last year the Adopt a Family program helped fill 300 hampers. Families can request a Christmas cheer hamper through agency referrals. Applications in Western Manitoba are open until November 18th. Well, the Winnipeg Jets have done it again. Gabe Velarde in the second period on TSN as the Winnipeg Jets blank the Utah Hockey Club 3-0. It is Winnipeg's 12th win in 13 starts, and Connor Hellebuck's second shutout of the season. Scoring twice last night, Nino Niederreiter on his 900th NHL career game. Coach Scott Arniel.
Well, that's a lot of games, and we had a little tribute to him and saw all his pictures from all the jerseys he's worn and the places he's played, and he hasn't changed a bit.
Up next, the Winnipeg Jets host Colorado tomorrow night. You can see more about last night's win as well as other Manitoba news. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Okay, so get ready, Heather. You're still with us, right?
I'm still with you.
Okay, so you know I'm at Randy's Diner 2 in West Fargo here, right?
Yes.
And so we're obviously talking to Americans about the U.S. election. We're about to hear actually from a young American who voted for the very first time yesterday. But first, we're coming off a hockey story. So you guys, how about a cheer for our Winnipeg Jets?
Absolutely.
Woo! Make it big. Make it big.
Yep.
Okay, now we'll get the real cheer. How about a cheer for let me get it right here. The West Fargo Cheyenne. Is that the name?
Yep.
Did I get it right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. We got hockey players in the house. Are you my first-time voter?
I am the first-time voter.
You are. Okay, so sit tight. We're going to talk to you about it in a second. Thank you guys for playing along. I couldn't resist, Heather. You were just talking about the Jets story there, and everybody, they were coming over to tell us about their team as well. So
That's wonderful, yeah.
I know. Super fun. All right, we better get through weather and traffic really briefly, and then we're going to talk more to our guest here. So, Abby, you have the details on the weather.
Yeah, what I can tell you is that we are looking at cloudy skies and chilly temperatures in the north and foggy conditions down south. Still in Winnipeg, freezing fog. We're seeing fog advisory in effect for southern Manitoba, where this thick fog will be affecting your commute this morning. So be very careful on the road. We're looking at -3 in Thompson, -10 in Churchill. Light snow we're seeing. That should be ending this evening, heading to a high of -12. And for down south, Brandon at 1, Dauphin at -1, Gimli 0, Steinbeck at -3, Maurice at 0. All this region seeing foggy conditions, and that should be clearing, and then we'll see some cloudy skies heading for a high of 3 degrees. Just use caution while driving this morning. The roads may be slippery. Just give yourself enough time, enough braking time. You see anything on the road, give us a call, 788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what, no matter who you support, what election you're voting in, or where you live in the world, there is something special about the moment where you go and you realize that you have power to make a difference and make your own choice and decision. And I'm talking about what it feels like when you go to cast a ballot in your very first election. And as you just heard, Madden Weber did that yesterday. Madden is 18 years old, and he's here surrounded with his audience, which is his fellow hockey players. But he's going to talk to us a little bit about the vote. How did it feel to go in the ballot box in Fargo last night?
Well, I actually early voted last week, and it was a new experience for me.
Yeah.
But the process was pretty easy.
Yeah. What kind of emotions were going through? Like, were you excited or just whatever? Or did you feel confident? Like, what did you feel when you were making that decision?
I took some like tests and quizzes to see who I side with, and I kind of knew who I was gonna pick before I went in there, so that made it a little easier for me.
You were a young man after my heart because you did your research, and I'm a journalist, so I love that. Who did you vote for?
I voted for the President, Donald Trump.
Tell me why. What appealed to you about the president when you were doing your research that you felt like he would be the choice for you?
Just the immigration stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff. It just seems like a problem, and you gotta fix that. And then also like lowering gas prices.
Mm-hmm.
They've been kind of kicking our butts.
Yeah. Do you live here, Madden? You live here, right here in Fargo?
Yeah. Just down the road.
Born and raised North Dakota?
Yep.
Yeah. When you think about your life here, we live, of course, just in Winnipeg, so like some 3-4 hours away.
Yeah.
You might have been there. When you think about your life here as a young American, what are your hopes for the future moving forward? What are the biggest things that you worry about? Thinking, could be anything. Could be climate. Could be I hope there's enough jobs. Could be what do you think about? What do you hope?
Well, I think it's just like the cost of everything becoming going to college next year and stuff, and paying for stuff on my own now. It's gonna need the costs have to be down and stuff. So that's probably my main focus.
Where are you going to college?
I'm undecided yet. I'm thinking University of North Dakota or NDSU.
Yeah, what are you interested in? What do you think you're going to study? Still figuring it out, or?
Yeah, but aiming towards more of the business field.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sitting down with us. How's your hockey team doing? I guess you guys are you told me getting to tryouts now, right?
Yeah, tryouts next Monday.
Okay, so you play defense, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. And how many years you've been with the Mustangs? I got to get the name of your team right.
This is my third year.
Yeah. All right. Well, good luck with the rest of your season. Thank you.
Right.
How do you do, guys? Great. Woo! They approve. They approve. Thank you, guys. Good luck with your season. Thanks for sitting down telling us about your vote last night. So, a young American supporting Donald Trump last night, and as you heard, the majority of people here in North Dakota did. In Minnesota, did not. They voted, for Harris last night. That's the way that state went. Ultimately, though, Donald Trump is the president-elect of the United States. It's 6:40 right now. Let's find out how that's impacting stock this morning. Crystalie Ramlichan is here with our business report. Good morning, Crystalie.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So let's start there. How is the stock market viewing this? What happened here at the U.S. election?
Yeah, well, Dow futures are surging 1,200 points. The last time the Dow jumped more than 1,000 points in a single day was back in November of 2022. And stocks are poised for a booming rally today. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ 100 futures are also up. And investments seen as beneficiaries under a Trump presidency have erupted. So Tesla, whose CEO is Elon Musk, is a prominent backer of Trump, and it saw shares surge 13% in pre-market trading. Bank shares also saw a boost, with JP Morgan, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo all jumping at least 6%. And Bitcoin, which could benefit from relaxed regulation under Trump, has soared to an all-time high. Now, the U.S. dollar index has climbed to its highest level since July on the belief that Trump's proposed tariffs against major U.S. trading partners would boost the greenback. And Trump's proposed tax cuts and other spending plans could spark economic growth, but could also widen the deficit and reignite inflation. And Marcy, shares of Trump Media and Technology Group, a social media company closely tied to Trump, surged a whopping 50% in pre-market trading.
To another story here, this one out of Canada. So I left the country, and I understand Tim Hortons seeing slower sales. I'm just kidding. What's the real reason that the parent company of Tim's is seeing slow sales?
Yeah, well, a difficult economic environment took a bite out of profit of the Toronto-based company in the most recent quarter. So sales fell across the other three of the company's brands, Burger King, Popeyes, and Firehouse Subs. And Tim Hortons sales were actually just slightly up. Even peers like McDonald's and Yum Brands, which owns Pizza Hut and KFC, are also seeing decreasing numbers. And after years of rising costs, consumers just aren't feeling very much relief at places like grocery stores, malls, or fast food joints. For more on this, here's Susan Lauder, who is a hospitality instructor at the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology in Edmonton.
And I think there's a couple of reasons. One might be that people are moving towards third-party delivery, in which, Skip the Dishes and Uber Eats, and ordering from different restaurants. The old quick-service restaurants, or the QSRs as we call them, their prices aren't that cheap anymore, and I think people are realizing that.
But executives say they've already seen signs of improvement last month, with interest rates coming down, gas prices improving, and inflation moderating.
How are markets looking this morning, Crystalie?
In Europe, stocks continue to gain momentum as global investors react to Trump's win. Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is up. Shanghai and Hong Kong are both down. Oil is down $1.15 to $70.84 U.S. per barrel. Gold is down $47.80 to $2,695.70 U.S. per ounce. And right now, the Canadian dollar is down more than a third of a cent to 72 cents U.S.
All right, Crystalie Ramlichan, thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's our CBC Business Report. .44 a.m., and let's hear more from the president-elect.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. And now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. We're going to help our country heal. We have a country that needs help, and it needs help very badly.
It is, as I mentioned, 6:45 a.m. And let's spend some time getting some analysis of what happened in the United States last night, which is where I am this morning in West Fargo, broadcasting live from Randy's Diner, too. Scott Blanchard is joining us. He's a freelance journalist based in Littlestown, Pennsylvania, where we have reached him this morning. Hi there.
Good morning.
Trump's headed back to the White House. Why do you think he won? And then just roll right into why you think Kamala Harris did not.
Sure. Well, Trump targeted some key constituencies. We know that from reporting during the campaign. Young men were a big deal with him, and he targeted Latino voters and black men. And I have not seen the demographic breakdowns, but it would appear that he was successful in courting those constituencies. And I think his plan was that's what he needed to do to get over the hump in the swing states in particular, and that appears to have paid off. The Harris analysis would be a little harder, I think, to figure out at this point. It may turn out that we find out that voters simply hung the post-COVID economic problems on her, which was a focus of Trump, and also sided with Trump over his attacks on her role in stemming illegal immigration, and ignored the other planks that she was trying to get across.
Let's help our Canadian understand some of the other significance of what we're absorbing this morning. For the first time in 4 years, the Republicans have also taken over the U.S. Senate. Remind us of the significance of that.
Sure. The Senate and the House both are important for presidents to have, with it controlled by their party, because of course that's where legislation has to go in order to get votes to become law. So it can make a big difference in what a president can accomplish, what parts of their agenda they can push through, and what signature legislation they can push through. So it's important in that sense. So the Senate has been called for Republicans. The latest I've seen is that the House is still too close to call, according to CBS News a little bit earlier this morning. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But the other reasons that the Senate is important in particular is that the Senate confirms presidential appointees. So you'll see Trump's cabinet nominations go through the Senate for confirmation. And then should there be an opening on the U.S. Supreme Court, which there isn't, and there's no indication there will be, but should there be, a nominee would have to go to the Senate to be confirmed. So, of course, the president would have that.
We just lost the end of your last sentence, Scott, so I hope you're still with us audibly here. But what are you going to be watching for in the coming weeks?
Right. Can you hear me?
We've got you.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things I'm curious is how people made decisions in the vote, when they went to vote. For example, Arizona voters approved a constitutional right to abortion, but Trump is apparently carrying the state. So that means that some voters went to the polls and voted with Kamala Harris on one of her signature issues, but voted against her for president. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. Trump ran a campaign where he demonized a lot of people, including immigrants and LGBTQ people. I'll be watching, is he going to continue attacks on them as he prepares to govern and governs, or on those who disagree with him? Retribution was a feature of, particularly in the later stages of the campaign. There's also the question of there were many, many hoax bomb threats at predominantly Democratic polling places in battleground states that the FBI says originated from Russian email domains. So again, we have Russians interference in a U.S. election, and I'll be looking for more information on that and whether or how it affected turnout or voting. So those are some of the things.
Scott Blanchard, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much.
Scott Blanchard, freelance journalist. We reached him in Littlestown, Pennsylvania, analyzing some of the election results last night and what the next Trump presidency is going to mean. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in West Fargo this morning with a special post-U.S. election show. And why? Because history is made today for all kinds of reasons. Donald Trump, at 78 years old, is the oldest president to be elected in the United States. We will see what his next 4 years are going to bring. We were just hearing from Scott Blanchard there about some concerns. He raised the issue of abortion. Of course, Roe v. Wade was overturned, and we're about to hear a little bit more about that from our reporting here over the last 2 days in West Fargo, and Moorhead. Now, you might know that West Fargo is actually a different city than Fargo, as is Moorhead. All three are often considered one large region. There's a total population here of about 230,000 people. Moorhead, though, is, of course, it's across the state line in Minnesota. But it's pretty much just like driving across Winnipeg to get through these three, two cities and into Moorhead. Yesterday, we did cross that state line. We were at a polling station because their voting patterns, of course, are different than here in North Dakota. And as you heard Heather reporting, they did support Kamala Harris last night. But Corey, tell us a little bit more about someone you met there.
Yeah, so I met with Alexis Stitch just as she was walking into a local church in Moorhead that was a polling station, and that her story really stuck with me. She launched into telling me about a terrifying medical incident that spurred her to vote for Kamala Harris.
I delivered my beautiful baby, and my placenta was still in my body after I delivered, and they sent me home, and I was ignored for weeks, and then I started bleeding out and showing signs of infection, and I was able to go in, receive a DNC, remove all the excess products of conception, and I am okay. I'm able to have more babies when I'm ready, and I am very thankful for a procedure that would have saved me. Otherwise, I would have been one of those people who suffered from an infection that could have ruined my ability to reproduce.
And that really is what's driving you to the polls today?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about creating a future for my daughter where I know she is protected every day. And so I'm voting to make sure women have the same access that I am lucky enough to have here in Minnesota.
Have you always voted Democrat, or is this kind of something that spurred you to vote for Kamala Harris?
I grew up in a very conservative household, and as I grew up, I was able to make my own opinions, and sometimes I swayed more to the Republican side, but this year it's definitely just been without a doubt. Yes, Kamala is the best vote for me.
So that was obviously outside a polling station early in the day yesterday before we knew the results that we're now all analyzing this morning. But Alexis there mentioning, what she cares about and why she voted for Kamala Harris. But she said the procedure she got was a D and C. So
Right.
what is it?
Yeah, so D&C is short for dilation and curettage. It involves expanding and scraping the inside of the uterus. It's also a common procedure used in abortions. And since Roe v. Wade was overturned, a number of states have banned the procedure, like Georgia, where they made it really difficult for doctors to know whether it's legal for them to actually perform it in situations like the ones Alexis was in. But Minnesota is not one of those states. It hasn't banned that at all.
Now, Minnesota may not have banned abortion, but just for the sake of our Manitoba audience that may not have been following all of this, we did a lot of calling, obviously, before we came down here to report from Fargo from this election. North Dakota, where we are, did do a deep ban after Roe v. Wade was overturned. But then that ban here was itself, appealed and overturned just in September, but not before the Red River Clinic actually moved to Moorhead across state lines. That was their only clinic here in North Dakota that had various women's services and had abortion services. The director of the clinic told me that they don't have plans to move back here to North Dakota. They feel that ban could go back into place if it gets to a higher court. And I suspect this morning with the results of the election, they certainly will be feeling that way as well. But when it comes to getting personal, another thing that a lot of voters have been talking to us about is that they aren't talking politics with friends and family anymore. I know you heard that, Corey?
Oh yeah, everywhere. It's,
yeah,
and even you don't even see election signs much on people's lawns because they're kind of afraid to share that publicly.
I've covered a lot of elections in 20 years. I've never seen fewer signs. However, more people were talking publicly about how they were voting to us this time if they were supporting Trump. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
I did meet a couple, though, speaking to that personal family voting discussions that aren't happening. I did meet a couple. They were grabbing breakfast after they voted yesterday, and she calls herself a never Trumper.
You're wearing your USA shirt proudly here on Election Day.
Well, it was a Menards $2.99 special clearance. I have 4 of them.
What's the mood been like down here in terms of talking to friends, family, neighbors? What's that been like?
Well, it's okay. I mean, I have neighbors, no, I should say I have family that are very Republican. It wouldn't matter who ran. As long as there's an R behind their name, that's who they're choosing. So we just choose not to discuss it.
What are your hopes for whoever wins this election to move the country forward? And what are your fears?
I hope it's a peaceful transition, that we don't go through January 6, 2021 again. And if we do, shame on us. We should have learned from the last time.
How do you hope or think Canadians might view your country depending on the outcome? or other countries in the world?
Well, I have a very good friend in Germany, and she prays that Mr. Trump does not win again. And she's been feeling a sin ever since 2016 on their version, and it's not very good. He's not a good representative to other European countries.
Not to any of our allies. He is just, Trump was a failure in my opinion. I actually was of the opinion back when he was on TV on his game shows that he was a jerk then, and I still think he's a jerk. And I'm using jerk because I can't say what I'd like to say.
So it was a couple of voters we talked to yesterday. We have time to slide in quickly. One more person, Corey.
Yeah, Trump voter. A lot of Trump voters we talked to talk about the economy. That's the case for Chad DeSmith as well. He voted because he wants to see less government, less regulation as well. But he was not necessarily totally stoked about his choice.
I don't think either candidate or candidates that are in either party were necessarily the best option. So it was more or less looking at policy more so than people. And from that perspective, it's kind of like, well, you got to vote for who you think is the best option. And unfortunately, in my opinion, these are the two options that we have. And it's kind of like go with policy more so than people. And that just, like I said, was I probably align more so with the policies that were presented by Trump more so than Harris.
Kind of hold your nose and hope for the best.
Yeah. Again, unfortunately, it feels that way. But, you know, it's for me personally, I've voted both parties. I'm not just a party line person. And it's difficult. It seems to be more difficult as we're polarizing, or, you know, we're becoming more polarized as a society, that if you vote for this person or you vote for this person, it's just terrible, or you're terrible if you believe this or you believe that. And I just don't think that's the right way to move forward from both sides. I mean, I think both parties are guilty of that. And I just have to go with the policies you think are going to be the best.
CBC's Corey Funk, obviously. You just heard him here live down in the States with me to cover the election, talking to voters yesterday as they were coming in and going in and coming out of polling stations. That was in Minnesota, by the way, one of the voters there. Well, this morning, that is all of what we're talking about. How do we move forward? And I say we because, I mean, the world, Canada, a lot of people leaning into what happened here in the States last night, and, of course, Americans. What's next? Stay tuned for our special coverage from West Fargo. Here's Heather Wells first with headlines.
Good morning. Well, here in Winnipeg, remembering a 28-year-old mother of four, family and friends of Brianna Klaus gathered in a vigil last night on the promenade behind Portage Place, the very place where she was found with life-threatening injuries last Thursday. She later died in hospital. We'll take you to the vigil last night. And Brandon Westman Christmas Cheer says they don't have room for all their holiday hamper requests. The nonprofit expects to pack at least 1,500 hampers this year, but they only have room in their center for 1,100. We'll hear what they hope happens coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Current temperature in Winnipeg is -1. The high today is 3 degrees. There's a fog advisory in effect for much of southern Manitoba. That might be affecting your drive. Please call Abby if you need, 788-3093. Well, hang on tight. Let's hear more about what went on in America last night. That's where we are this morning in West Fargo, live at Randy's Diner, too. And we have a busy hour ahead. Late night, date night, and election night at Applebee's here in Fargo with a couple who's watched the results come in at that restaurant for the last 3 elections. We met up with them. It was probably about midnight last night. They were watching it come in. We'll hear what their hopes are for moving forward in this country and why one of them says that Canada and the world should be leaning in. And she said should be thinking about propaganda and what it means in 2024. So we're going to get her to explain what she meant by that. So stay tuned. In addition, we have a voter panel coming up for you. They supported different people last night. We'll see what it's like for them to share a breakfast table this morning. Stay tuned. Our voter panel will join us live from West Fargo in the next hour of the show. The show is Information Radio, live on location. You're with CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Stay with us, Manitoba.
At the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, Canadians pause to reflect and remember. honoring those who have served and remembering those we have lost. On November 11th, live from the National War Memorial in Ottawa, join CBC News for special coverage of the Remembrance Day ceremony on radio, TV, CBC News Network, and on CBC Gem, CBC Explore, and local streaming channels.
I'm Marcia Young in Toronto.
And I'm John Northcott, outside the State Capitol building in Georgia.
This is a special edition of World Report. Donald Trump will be the 47th President of the United States.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country and maybe beyond.
CBC News has projected the win for Trump. He has secured 276 electoral votes, 6 more than what is needed to win the Oval Office.
Donald Trump won in some major swing states, including Pennsylvania and Georgia, where I am this morning. The CBC's Tom Perry joins me from West Palm Beach, Florida. Tom, how did Donald Trump achieve this remarkable political comeback?
Well, first and foremost, by convincing American voters to look past a long list of issues that to any other candidate would likely be disqualifying. Trump is a convicted felon who tried to overthrow the 2020 U.S. election. He openly admires dictators, and he's pledged to go after his own political enemies once he's in office. And yet, Trump last night rolled through many of the key swing states upon which this election really turned. He's won or is leading in Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. He's leading in the popular vote. And CBC News has now declared Trump has reached that 270 electoral college seat threshold, and he will return to the White House for a second term.
Tom, even before reaching that threshold, Trump came out early this morning to declare victory and deliver a speech to his supporters. What did he have to say?
Well, you know, when Trump cast his ballot near his home in Mar-a-Lago yesterday, he said he hadn't prepared a victory speech. And his address that began at around 2 o'clock in the morning, Florida time, was a rambling stream of words and ideas about some of Trump's favorite topics, things like clamping down on the border, building what he calls a golden age for America. But he thanked his supporters for helping him pull off what he's calling the greatest political comeback ever.
But it's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
So Trump told the crowd voters have given him a strong mandate, and keep in mind that mandate includes deporting millions of people and slapping steep tariffs on goods and materials entering the U.S.
The CBC's Tom Perry in West Palm Beach, Florida. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Waves of disappointment washed over Howard University in Washington, D.C. It is Kamala Harris's alma mater. Thousands of her supporters had gathered there for an election night watch party. As the CBC's Katie Simpson reports, many people left early as those results trickled in.
We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted.
The co-chair of the Harris campaign, Cedric Richmond, delivered the blow Democrats were dreading, telling supporters around 12:30 in the morning to go home. Kamala Harris would not speak for now. Democrats had already been leaving the Washington, D.C. watch party. What started as a celebratory night with dancing, singing, and people waving American flags morphed into a somber display of shock and heartbreak. Silence and stunned faces standing out in the crowd as key swing states were called for Donald Trump.
I'm most disappointed in a nation that has voted overwhelmingly for a man who is a manifest bigot, for a man who is an autocrat and a fascist, and who attempts to really destroy the traditions and the trajectories of American democracy.
What a lot of people underestimate was that Christian vote, and I just want to say, as somebody who is practicing that religion, they were on TV demonizing, calling Kamala Harris a Jezebel.
I mean, a little confused, definitely disappointed. I mean, kind of the cynic in me wants to think like, oh, maybe this was like, oh, it was always going to happen.
Finger pointing and hand wringing will naturally follow. Democrats had framed this as an existential vote to defend American democracy and to fight for women's rights, messages that did not motivate voters in the ways they'd hoped. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Taking a look at what did and did not motivate voters as they headed to the polls is the CBC's Richard Madden. He joins us from Philadelphia. Richard, what went right for Donald Trump in this campaign?
Yeah, hey, John. Well, I think his economic message really resonated. His simple opening pitch, are you better off than you were 4 years ago, just landed. The economic data in this country is improving, but a lot of voters here just aren't feeling it. And Trump kept hammering it, while Harris appeared to speak in broad strokes about change and social justice issues. So it looks like there was a disconnect. And many voters also agreed with Trump that the immigration system is broken. They blame Biden for it and Harris. And you also have to look at the mood of the country. People are just still so frustrated with the system. And Trump's pledge to overhaul institutions and change how things are done in Washington is something a lot of folks here feel, that a sense that the government doesn't work for them anymore.
In the end, Richard, the race wasn't as tight as some had predicted. Yeah. What went wrong for the Kamala Harris campaign?
Yeah, well, there'll be an autopsy from her campaign, absolutely. But it appears that the vice president just underperformed. In other words, she needed to exceed turnout in the cities and the suburbs to offset Trump's gains in the rural areas, but clearly that didn't happen. In fact, she did worse running up the numbers in many parts of this country than Biden did in 2020. You would hear voters saying they still didn't know who she was or what she really stood for, and her key message on social justice issues just didn't appear to resonate or motivate the base as much as they thought they would. So as I noted, there'll be an autopsy of the Harris campaign, but the early buzz is that people are pointing fingers at a disconnected campaign leadership that apparently ignored warning signs from troops on the ground.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Philadelphia. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, John.
World leaders are starting to publicly congratulate Donald Trump. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says this is, quote, history's greatest comeback. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says the friendship between Canada and the U.S. is the envy of the world. And Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky says he is looking forward to an era of a strong United States under Donald Trump.
John, we have Briar Stewart in our London bureau, and Briar, Zelensky says Ukraine needs support from the United States to continue fighting back against Russia. How likely is that support to continue under a Trump administration?
Well, I think there is a lot of uncertainty and in many circles deep concern, given that Donald Trump has vowed repeatedly that he will end the war and do it quickly. Trump has spoken out against the tens of billions of dollars in U.S. military and financial aid that has been sent to Ukraine. I think there's a fear now that that will be stopped or slowed, and the country could be forced to make some kind of deal. Still, on the streets of Kyiv today, some wondered if Trump would be able to make a difference in a war that's grinding on.
We cannot say for sure whether one or the other candidate will be beneficial for Ukraine. We don't know yet.
We are waiting for this straight move, stop the war in just one day. It could be today, tomorrow. We can wait till Friday. You're the president. Please do it, Mr. Trump.
Of course, all of this comes at a time when Ukraine is in a very difficult situation, with Russian forces advancing at the fastest rate in the southeast in more than a year.
What is the reaction out of Russia this morning?
Well, the Kremlin said that Trump's victory means that there is an opportunity for the U.S. to play a role in negotiations. But really, throughout the whole U.S. campaign, the Russian government has given a pretty muted response to the possibility of a Trump presidency, even as state TV presented him as the most favorable candidate. Trump has described his relationship with President Vladimir Putin as very good in the past, but there are already some Russian officials this morning musing that Trump could possibly bring in a reset to U.S.-Russian relations.
Thank you, Briar.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Briar Stewart in London. CBC News has also received reaction from Gaza, sent by a freelance reporter in Khan Yunis. This man's name is Abu Osama Naim. He says the election of Donald Trump will change the Palestinian situation for the worse. He believes the Netanyahu and Trump administrations will be twins. But this man, Safwat al-Kahuki, says he hopes Trump will pressure Netanyahu to end the war in Gaza.
And before we go, Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. He won 276 electoral college votes. The Republicans took key swing states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia, where I am this morning. That is the latest news from World Report.
I'm Marcia Young with John Northcott in Georgia. This is CBC News.
And I just voted for Harris Walz.
I'm Jason Pratt, and I just voted for Donald Trump. Got some concerns about economic things that, people are struggling, and that's my main driver.
I feel that they are not as disruptive as the other candidate, and that we need to have unity. You are listening to Information Radio.
Live from the United States of America.
On CBC Radio 1.
Go Leafs!
You had to say go Jets, actually.
Yeah, yeah, I can actually go Jets. I should have Jets.
Are you a Jets fan?
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, they're doing really well, right?
We are live in West Fargo this morning. We're at Randy's Diner, too. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you for tuning in to this very important and special post-election show in the United States. So this hour on the show, we have a lot to cover. This morning when we walked into this diner, Randy's Diner 2 here, I asked for one word for how people are feeling about the election results last night. And I heard relieved, ecstatic, disappointed, enlightened, and hopeful. So we're going to hear more from North Dakotans. We have a voter panel coming up. We're also going to hear from you, Manitoba. You've been calling and writing to us about how you're making sense about what happened in America last night. I should say the early hours of this morning, the wee hours. I think Corey and I Corey Funk and I down here got what between us maybe about 3 hours of sleep or so.
Maybe, yeah.
All right, well, fuel up with the coffee over there, buddy, and we'll move on. I should also mention that this hour on the program, we're going to hear a really interesting piece that we actually did an interview. Probably it was right around midnight last night with a couple that we found that was watching the election results. They were out at a local bar in Fargo, and they were talking to us about what they're thinking moving forward, their hopes. One of them was very worried about divisiveness, sticking and staying in this country moving forward. She also said Canada and the world should be watching and should be considering the role of propaganda, that's her language and what she said, in elections. And so we're going to hear a little bit more about how she framed that and why she said that. So stay tuned. Right now, Heather Wells, what are you working on in Winnipeg in our newsroom?
Good morning. Well, raising their voices in a vigil last night. Family and friends of Brianna Klaus gathered on the promenade behind Portage Place Mall last night. That's where the 28-year-old woman was found suffering from life-threatening injuries last Thursday. She later died in hospital. We're going to hear from her family and how they are remembering her. As well, the Brandon Westman Christmas Cheer says it does not have enough space for all the hamper requests they're getting this year. How much space do they have and how many requests are coming in? We'll hear that in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's check this weather in Winnipeg. Abby, I can tell you here in Fargo, obviously we're 4 hours down south, but kind of a beautiful sky this morning. It's a little bit of hope that we might see some sun here in Fargo. What's it like at home?
Yeah, the opposite here. We're looking at cloudy skies, chilly temperatures, and snow in the north of the province, with fog also down south. And Winnipeg, 0 right now. We woke up to some freezing fog covering the area. Now, this led to that fog advisory that is in effect because we got like thick fog reducing visibility significantly in parts of southern Manitoba, and this is expected to clear up later this morning, which should improve visibility. But for anyone driving now, I'll tell you, take extra care. Visibility may suddenly drop to 0, so you need to be very careful on the road. For today, just expect it to clear up as you get into the morning, leaving us with cloudy skies for the rest of the day. It will get breezy at some point, and we're looking at a high of 3 degrees. We're seeing light snow in Churchill at 11 degrees and -2 in Thompson, and then for the rest of the south, Brandon at 0, Dauphin at -1, similar condition in Gimli, Steinbach, and Morris. So it's more like a foggy start and in most of the areas down south. And for traffic, if you see anything, let me know. Though we have because of this fog in Winnipeg and surrounding areas, please use extra caution while driving. Driving conditions will definitely be affected this morning. Reduce your speed, slippery roads, give yourself enough braking time, and watch out for deer. We got this call from Dave. He says Highway 59 southbound appears to be closed at Gavin Road near Spring Hill Ski area. So Dave says it looks like a crash, emergency crew on scene. So be advised about Highway 59 southbound.
All right, thanks very much, Abby.
Thank you.
Call Abby if you see any problems, by the way, on the commute, 788-3093. I'm Marcy Marcusa with Corey Funk. We are in West Fargo this morning, broadcasting the morning after what has been, a long lead up to the U.S. election, and the results came in last night. Donald Trump has been reelected. He is the president-elect this morning in this country. A couple comments from Manitobans before we return to talking to Americans. So a couple of you have been calling us. We'll get those calls on a little bit later this hour, but I want to read some comments from Facebook. We asked how you're making sense of the results as a Manitoban. Rob Jessup wrote in, I'm worried we're going to have a large increase in tariffs, resulting in an increase in cost to what we can afford. I'm worried the U.S. will pull out of NATO. I'm worried U.S. will stop supporting Ukraine, and what that will look like. And Trump to tariffs, Trump has signaled his plan to impose a 10% across-the-board tariff on imports, and so we'll see what develops there. And finally, Manitoba Taylor wrote in, that's her moniker, said, I had to try my best to explain to my very upset 12-year-old how this is her language, bully who is a convicted felon could become the president. Not an easy conversation, especially when I don't understand it myself. So I'm reading direct quotes from you that are writing in this morning. We're asking you from your Manitoba perspective how you're making sense of the U.S. election results. Call us, 788-3205. Well, last night I was, beyond talking to voters, I actually dipped into the Democratic watch party here in Fargo. And I can tell you, as you can imagine, it was quiet very quickly. And people, I think, very quickly could see the writing on the wall. I suspect, Corey, where you were at the Republican watch party, very different mood.
Yeah, definitely pretty upbeat. Never got too rowdy, though, because it did wrap up before the actual election or before the call was officially made. But it was at a bar at the south end of Fargo. And right at the entrance, actually, there was a life-size cardboard cutout of Donald Trump. And as I was walking in, so were Christy Brown and her friend Dawn Aker. And they were both wearing MAGA hats. And they couldn't help but stop and take a picture.
If you were to say one word, what you're feeling right now, what are you feeling?
Prior to the outcome of the election, right now I feel division. I feel division. I feel like everything that is happening now is all hatred. It's not so much about what's good for our country, it's just about the person, the political views of everybody, and everybody's at each other's throats and forgetting what the whole fight is about, or not even a fight, what the whole thing is about. It's about protecting our country and our freedoms, and it's ridiculous that nobody can get along.
I guess one thing that won't change after tonight is that division you're talking about,
Which
right?
is unfortunate.
Yeah. Like, how do you move on? Like, that's one thing that's I know North Dakota is largely a Republican state, but there still is people I've talked to. There's still plenty of Democrats, plenty of people who have people on both political parties on both sides, and their family, friends, circles. It's still a community, right?
My family is split. My family is split, but you have to have respect for everybody's decision. You have to have respect for who they support, and don't make a big fight about it.
And so for yourself, after this, regardless of the result, do you think your family's going to be okay in terms of, how they get along? Do you feel like you're walking on eggshells sometimes? Yeah. Because everything's kind of political these days, it seems.
Yes. My mom and my brother and my dad, we were all sitting, visiting one evening, and my mom made a comment about Trump, supporting Trump, and my brother went ballistic. So, I mean, it causes friction even between mom and son, so it's unfortunate because the world is like that, and like I said, it comes down to people not believing in what's good for our country, but it comes down to just basically arguing between people.
Those were some of the voters who supported Donald Trump, and they were at the Republican Watch Party last night in Fargo. Of course, in conversation there with my colleague here, Corey Funka, who is in West Fargo with me this morning at Randy's Diner, too. Well, throughout the rest of the programs, you're going to hear him a couple of times, as well as another voice. We have a couple voters that have agreed to be with us this morning. So let's start with someone who also supported Donald Trump in the Republican Party. David Chapman is my next guest. He's here live with us. He used to live in Winnipeg, actually. Now lives here in West Fargo, I understand pretty close by, and works here as a lawyer. Also has worked as a malpractice lawyer, does some of that work, used to work in immigration, in law as well. And in 2022, he ran to be a district court judge as well. So he's here. How are you feeling this morning about the results?
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
Tell me why you supported Trump.
When it comes down to it, I think it's got to do with the economy. You know, it's what James Carville had said with Bill Clinton back in the 1990s when he said, you know, the motto of their campaign should be, it's the economy, stupid. And they've gone with that ever since, and that is a big issue for me. I find, as a person who runs my own firm, that it is easier to run a law firm when you are under a Republican administration as opposed to Democrats. And primarily that's because people need lawyers for two things. It's either a luxury or a necessity. When it's a necessity, you see them come to you anyway, but when it's a luxury, they don't come to you if they don't have the money for that. And it is leaner years during Democrat administrations. So I see it even on a micro scale like that.
Yesterday, we were talking to some folks that supported Trump as well. Some of them were saying that they didn't believe he would follow through with some of the rhetoric that they weren't big fans of. But they did. They talked about the economy a lot, as you are, and that's why Donald Trump got their vote. But then I guess the pushback was, how can you be so sure he's not going to follow through with all these things? How are you framing that? Because there are a lot of people that are concerned about the more extreme things that he has said, and obviously I don't have to rattle them all off. You know what they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't think that he's going to be an extremist either. He's a different guy on the campaign trail than he is in the White House. If we remember back to 2016, the lock her up chants that were all over about Hillary Clinton, and he never did a thing there. And he's already indicated, his son has indicated just last week, he said, I'm not interested in going after Hunter Biden. I'm not interested in going after Joe Biden. He said, I'm interested in governing the country.
How do you square the January 6th attack, and what are your thoughts on your lawyer? So I'm really interested on how the Supreme Court makeup has changed and what that might mean for decisions moving forward. How do you feel about all of it?
Well, with January 6th, I think it was really, from his standpoint, it was really blown out of proportion. Because he did specifically state in his speech, and a lot of people forget it, we're going to walk down to the Capitol and peacefully protest. He did say that that was his express words, and it got out of hand. I did not like the fact that the reaction was so slow to respond to it, but there are just so many things involved there, and I don't put all the blame for January 6th on him. The slow reaction time I do place on him. I wish he'd acted quicker. In terms of the Supreme Court, I love it. It's like I'm a Federalist Society member. So most of the justices he picked are Federalist Society members and stick to the same sort of philosophy, the originalist philosophy that I have as well.
What are your thoughts on moving forward? No matter how people voted in this country last night, everyone is acknowledging divisiveness, not just by when you look at the numbers, but in families and people not talking anymore about anything. How do you move forward, and where does the blame, maybe not blame, who's responsible for the divisiveness when you look at what was said on the campaign trail, maybe by all parties? What's your sense of this?
I think that they're all responsible for this, and Donald Trump was not my first choice. I voted Republican all my adult life. I supported him in 2016 and 2020 wholeheartedly, but I was actually crossing the aisle to support Robert F. Kennedy this time around. And so my concern in supporting Kennedy was he was really focused on this divisiveness and how we can't survive as a country if we're divided. And so, yes, I have a great concern regarding that. I think that it goes both ways. I did not like how in 2020 and even 2016, the name calling and the divisiveness that went on, it's hard to fix that once an election is done because there are hard feelings afterwards. And I think one of his challenges is going to be unifying the country now that this election is over. But he's got people like Robert Kennedy to help him now, who is focused on that sort of thing too. Kennedy's on the transition team, and he is likely to land somewhere in the administration. It came as kind of a surprise to people that knew me that I was willing to cross the aisle even when he was running for the Democratic nomination. And I was actually one of his alternate electors here in North Dakota.
So you firmly believe in these people to take the country forward?
Yes.
I know you're with us for the morning, so we'll have much more to talk about. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That is one of the voters that's agreed to stay with us for the remainder of the show, and used to live in Winnipeg as well, so we'll have to ask him about that perspective too. Actually moved here to Fargo right after 9/11. David Chapman, he lives in West Fargo, works here as a lawyer, and last night he did support the Republican Party and Donald Trump. Well, it is time now to switch gears, and we're going to talk morning sports with Scott Regehr, and that means that it's 7:25. Hello to you.
Yeah, a little respite from the politics, Marcy.
I think that people will welcome that. So let's start with hockey. The Jets, man, they are off. They continue this excellent start to the season.
Yeah, Connor Hellebuck stopped all 20 shots he faced last night, Marcy. Nino Niederreiter, in his 900th career game, scored twice. It ended a 3-0 win over Utah. So 12-1 to start the season for the Jets. They've been phenomenal. And I loved last night how good they were shorthanded, because their penalty kill, if you were to nitpick, was middling up till this point. But they were a perfect 4 for 4 last night against Utah. So they're leading the entire league, and defenseman Josh Morrissey says the recent results aren't entirely unexpected.
You look at the success we had last season, we felt like we could build off that. Did I think we'd be sitting here 12-1? I mean, who knows? But at the same time, I really feel confident about our group, and what gives us success is sticking to our structure 5-on-5. Now with the special teams, going well, and our goaltending going great, it gives us different ways we can win different nights. So a lot of hockey left, but so far so good.
Next up for Winnipeg, a home matchup tomorrow against Colorado. A first game then against the Avalanche since Colorado knocked the Jets out of last year's playoffs. Hopefully a bigger turnout for that one. Just 12,000 and change last night to see that game against Utah.
Well, I'll tell you what, when it comes to local football, there's going to be a great turnout on Saturday, to say the least. I'm going to be there. The Bombers continue preparations for the Western Final. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, the team looking forward to the quote-unquote chess match in the Western Final against the Riders. Now, neither team, Marcy, is among the leaders offensively in the league, but they are number 1 and number 2 in terms of defense, and that can be seen especially in how the Riders contained Brady Oliveira. The running back failed to crack 50 yards even once against the Green and White this season. For offensive coordinator Buck Pierce, he says it comes down to one thing, whether it is the run game or an aerial attack.
It all equates to having success on first down, and then you're able to, maybe dictate the pace and the flow of the game a little bit. At this stage in the game, we know each other fairly well. There's not a lot of secrets anymore, right? So you got to look at yourselves and what can we do to execute, to stay on rhythm and execute it as an offense.
On the defensive side of the ball, Marcy, it looks like lineman Jamal Woods, defensive back Brandon Alexander, and linebacker Kyrie Wilson should all be good to go. Only 3 more days now until the Western Final.
And a soccer where a Canadian is in the form of his life.
And that's a lovely ball to David, and David could be clear. Here is the chance! He's done it again! Jonathan David lighting up the UEFA Champions League for Lille.
See, this is why they call him the Iceman. Jonathan David scoring a beautiful goal for Lille in a Champions League draw against Juventus yesterday. It's something the Ottawa native has done with regularity of late. Last month, remember, he scored against Real Madrid, handing the best club on the planet its first Champions League loss in 2 years. David scored twice against Atletico Madrid in the Spanish capital. That's something very few players have ever done. And then you mix in there the fact David came home and played for Canada and scored the winner against Panama. Well, it's been a pretty nice stretch for him. All told, he has more goals than games played in his last 10 outings. And Marcy, when it comes to scoring in Europe, only 3 players have found the back of the net more frequently. Maybe you've heard of them. Harry Kane of Bayern Munich, Barcelona's Robert Lewandowski, and Manchester City's Erling Haaland. Not bad company for Jonathan
No doubt.
David.
Thanks very much.
You betcha.
That's Scott Regary's with us every morning with sports on CBC. So he's back tomorrow at 7:25 again. We're asking you as a Manitoban, how are you absorbing and making sense of the results of the U.S. election? Here last night, I'm down in America. We are in West Fargo this morning. We had Candace Stearns wrote into us this morning, and Candace has said, I just moved back to Canada. I lived in the U.S. for 20 years. I lived through the first Trump administration, and every day I woke up to him doing something else dreadful to the country and the world. I couldn't do it again. Americans have a very short memory. And once again, just reading the comments from Manitobans this morning as we continue to move forward and understand what this election last night here means, not just for here in the U.S., but for Canada and for the world. So stay tuned. We have more voters to talk to. Stay with us. Right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, we're warming up. It is now 0 in Winnipeg. Still foggy, though. That fog not expected to lift until later this morning. A cooler day than yesterday, a high of 3. Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country and maybe beyond.
Donald Trump has secured 276 electoral votes, 6 more than needed to win the Oval Office. Trump's Republican Party also won a majority in the Senate, reclaiming the House from the Democrats, which they lost back in 2020. Now, world leaders are starting to publicly congratulate Donald Trump. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says this is history's greatest comeback. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sending his congratulations, saying the friendship between Canada and the U.S. is the envy of the world. And Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky says he is looking forward to an era of a strong United States under President Trump. Now in Fargo, North Dakota, Madden Weber voted for the first time in this election. The 18-year-old hockey player says he did his research to figure out which issues were important to him and which candidate most lined up with his values, and he cast his ballot for Donald Trump. Weber says the cost of everything is a concern, and he is considering going to college to study business next year.
The immigration stuff, that stuff, it just seems like a problem, and you got to fix that. And then also, like, lowering gas prices, they've been kind of kicking our butts.
Trump took 3 electoral college votes in North Dakota. We're going to hear more from North Dakota coming up on Information Radio. And you can find the latest national and international news, as well as the latest on the U.S. election, on World Report at 8. A song of mourning and remembrance in downtown Winnipeg. Family and friends gathered behind Portage Place to honor Brianna Close. The 28-year-old mother of 4 died after being found with life-threatening injuries last Thursday afternoon. Shauna Close is Brianna's sister, and she wants people to remember how the former healthcare aide lived instead of how she died.
All the good times, the laughing, going to the beach together, hanging out, even just at home, the simple things now are so important to me. These little memories with her.
32-year-old Ryan John Kennedy has been charged with second-degree murder. Brandon Westman Christmas Cheer says it does not have enough room for all the holiday hamper requests coming in. The nonprofit expects to pack at least 1,500 hampers this year. Volunteer Bob Wahlberg says the headquarters can only hold 1,100, and that means Brandon Westman Christmas Cheer is counting on the Adopt a Family program to help fill hundreds of hampers.
There's a lot of satisfaction when I talk to people that have adopted families. It's great for the children in the adopting family to experience it and to go shopping knowing they're doing something for somebody else.
Applications are now open for Brandon's Christmas cheer. Families can request hampers through local social services agencies. The last chance to apply is November 18th. A ceremony is going to be held Sunday afternoon to celebrate the life of the Honorable Justice Murray Sinclair. Sinclair was a lawyer, a judge, senator, and chief commissioner of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He died Monday morning at the age of 73. A public memorial service will start at 2 Sunday afternoon at Canada Life Centre. Doors there will open at 1. Well, it was Nino's night. Nino Niederreiter on the third period on TSN there as the Winnipeg Jets blanked the Utah Hockey Club 3-0. Niederreiter would add one more goal into an empty net. All of this on his 900th game of his NHL career.
It's definitely a great feeling. Like I said, obviously it's a cool night to score a goal like that.
It's Winnipeg's 12th win in 13 starts, Connor Hellebuck's second shutout of the season, and the Jets are right back at it tomorrow night, hosting the Colorado Avalanche. You can read more about last night's game as well as other Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather Wells, thank you.
Thank you.
You are with CBC the morning after the vote happened here in the United States, and that's where I am live. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're at Randy's Diner 2 in West Fargo this morning as people are trickling in, having their eggs, and a lot of them not talking politics. A lot of people here saying that they're kind of, they voted, they're moving on, they're going to try to understand the results. Donald Trump, of course, as you have been hearing, and maybe you woke up to the news this morning because it was in the wee hours of the morning, Donald Trump was, by CBC News, projected to be the president-elect. By the way, just a couple things about that. Trump is 78 years old. He makes history as the oldest president to be elected here, and he's only the second president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. North Dakota, where I am this morning, did support Donald Trump overwhelmingly. I think the split was about 70% to 30 for Kamala Harris. But right across the border here, Kamala Harris in Minnesota did win the vote there. Overall, though, Trump winning the popular vote, it's looking like, as well, as we're continuing to crunch the numbers from last night. Let's get into your life in Manitoba, though, and find out what's happening with the weather and also with traffic. There's a bunch going on, Abby. Why don't we start with weather? It's fog is the issue in part of the province.
Yeah, fog is the issue. Cloudy conditions, chilly, snow in the north. That will be clearing late in the day. Currently, Winnipeg, we're seeing this freezing fog. That should clear as we get late into the morning, leaving behind cloudy conditions. And this is hampering our commute this morning for a lot of people. I will get to that shortly. Brandon is at 0, misty at this time, heading to a high of 4. Thompson is at -2, heading to a high of dropping to more like -1. Further north in Churchill, it's -11. We'll see a high of -12. Dauphin is at -1, heading to a high of 2. Gimli -1, heading to a high of 3 degrees. Steinbach, it's at -3. Foggy conditions also in that region, heading to a high of 3. And Morris, foggy conditions, you're seeing 0, heading to a high of 3. And talking about traffic, Winnipeg and surrounding areas, we're seeing these foggy conditions, so you need to be careful on the road. Drive to conditions and reduce speed when necessary. It's slippery. Give yourself enough braking time and also watch out for deer. Dave called and said Highway 59 southbound appears to be closed at Gavin Road near the Spring Hill ski area. He says it looks like a crash and emergency crews on scene, so you need to take care in that area. Fred also called westbound Dougal Road, and the perimeter is moving very slow. He says this is because of the foggy conditions and people are being very careful on that area. Manitoba Highways are also reporting that there's been a crash on the southbound perimeter near Russell Road, and that has the left and lane closed. So you need to also exercise some caution as you approach that area. You see anything, give us a call, 788-3093.
Wow. What a list.
Yep, a lot happening. Foggy out there, slippery roads. Be careful on the roads.
It sounds like Corey's going to owe you lunch when he gets back, because I don't know about you, Abby, but every time we're in studio, now Corey's going to put his mic on for sure.
Whenever you leave me behind, things always happen.
Yeah, and when you're on air, you're like, oh, nothing's going on.
I know, right?
Everything's
I just
good.
wonder if I'm paying attention right or not. No, I know I am. So thanks for covering for me, by the way.
788-3093 on a foggy morning. Yeah, be careful out there, please, and call if you have any other updates. Well, speaking of calls, we asked you to weigh in on Facebook. I've been reading some comments, but also to call our listener line and answer this question. What is on your mind as a Manitoban as you make sense of the U.S. election results this morning? Here's a call we got.
Hi, good morning. My name is Mustafa Ibro. I believe the election result went the way I expected. I have a lot of family members in USA. As Oromo political activist myself here in Canada, I follow U.S. election very closely. There is a reason why Democrats lost, in my opinion. Most Muslim Americans and Arab Americans voted a protest vote against Democrats because they believed Joe Biden and Kamala Harris led the Gaza genocide under their watch. And they thought if Trump elected, there is no worst scenario that comes that didn't happen already. So they voted to just teach Democrats how disappointed they were, and that is what actually we witnessed in Michigan, Minnesota, and all other populous Muslim Americans society lives. The majority of Americans show the world that their belief in democracy, their belief in women's right, the right to women to their body was just a lip service. It is not something that they deeply hold. Had they really believed in those convictions, they could have voted for Pamela Harris, but unfortunately didn't, and Trump won. We'll see how the world will react to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your call and your views, as stated on our listener line. And if you want to weigh in, if you're listening this morning, we'd love to hear from you about how you're absorbing and making sense of what happened in the U.S. election last night. The number is 788-3205. I also just want to reflect something here. Just for time, we'll read more comments a little bit later, but I've been scanning all the comments coming in on our Facebook page. A number of you are already drawing parallels and saying that you are paying attention and absorbing the results last night because you have some concerns about what may happen in our upcoming federal election next year in Canada. And so we're going to share some of those comments and lean into what you've meant by that as you're writing to us this morning. You can call as well, 788-3205. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in West Fargo today in North Dakota, and Corey Funk is here on scene with me. Back at CBC Manitoba and Winnipeg at home in Canada, Corey and I are missing Abby Adeyemi and Kevin Nipatebo and Leif Larson, who are all in our control room. Heather Wells as well. Please follow all of the hardworking news reports that our local newsroom has been putting out about the election. Ian Fraser and Warren Kay, our colleagues, have been down here as well. So please go to our website locally, cbc.ca/Manitoba, and you can see a lot more analysis there. Well, as for Corey and I last night, you heard earlier this hour that Corey was at the Republican Watch Party in Fargo, and we split up. I was at the Democrat Party at a local hotel here for part of the night. One of the people I couldn't help but notice in the crowd was wearing beaded red dress earrings, like the little red dress, MMIWG. In fact, she was a candidate for Public Service Commission in Fargo. She lost last night. But Tracy Wilkie is an Anishinaabe and Métis. She's an enrolled member of the Turtle Mountain Chippewa and supported Kamala Harris. Naturally, I was at the Democratic Party. But of everyone that we spoke with, and I mean over the last 2 days, voters, unprovoked, just asking openly, what are your issues? What do you care about? Why are you voting? Or why are you running in this case? She was the only person here in the States, in Fargo, that brought up the environment as one of her key concerns. Have a listen.
We have to have environmental protections here in North Dakota because, in my opinion, they're using us as a environmental sacrifice zone.
How are you going to be feeling tomorrow if Donald Trump wins tonight? Since you raised the environment, about that issue in your country?
I don't like it, especially like where we are right now, the Oshete-Shikoan and the land of the Anishinaabe people, and the way the political environment is right now in North Dakota, like, it concerns me either way that there might be rhetoric, you know. My hopes moving forward, no matter what happens, is that people connect with one another. We are more alike than we are different. You're from Canada, so you must have heard, you know, we look out for our next 7 generations, and like, yeah.
What's the hope for the next 7 generations, or the outlook if Donald Trump becomes your president?
That's terrifying. If you haven't heard of Project 25, it's going to cut a lot of funding. One of the projects is Head Start. I grew up on the Turtle Mountain Reservation, and Head Start, you know, gave us a head start. It's a program for low-income kids. I would say I'm a 1971 Head Start graduate, but like when I think of the trauma on the reservation, and you know, like if they should cut that, like what's going to happen?
Is that something on the table under Trump that will go?
That's under that Project 25. There's a whole lot of rhetoric in there, so.
Some people that are voting for Trump have said, we don't really like some of the things he's saying. We think it's rhetoric and he won't follow through.
No. We've seen what happened at the Capitol, and it was, for the most part, justified. That's dangerous, and we shouldn't have to live in fear by what comes out of our leadership's mouth. I moved away in 1994 after college to Portland, Oregon. The state was blue. They were taking care of, you know, the needs on the reservation, and I've been back for 5 years, and it's been like 15, 20 years behind. You know, many of the things that we were doing 30 years like are just now starting in North Dakota, which is good to see that it's starting.
Tracy Wilkie sharing her thoughts with me yesterday. She's an Anishinaabe Métis. She's an enrolled member of the Turtle Mountain Chippewa, and she supported Kamala Harris. She also ran, but lost, for Public Service Commission in Fargo, and she was obviously talking there about some of her concerns should the Republicans and Donald Trump return to office, and that is where we're at this morning in the United States. Donald Trump is the president-elect. If you're just waking to the results, you can read more about what happened, but he overwhelmingly won everything, and also the popular vote. We're watching that. So right now he's secured 276 electoral votes, but CBC News has projected him as the president-elect. So if you want to weigh in on your thoughts on this, and also whether or not it changes anything for you, and I'm talking to you at home here, right? I'm sitting in America, but this is all trying to understand through our Manitoba and Canadian lens how this will impact your life. Are you thinking about immigration? Are you thinking about the border between our countries, which so many of us cross and have grown up crossing each and every year, right? Down for a little visit. Are you thinking about trade? Are you a business that does business down here? Do things look brighter to you, or what are your concerns this morning? How are you feeling? Weigh in, 788-3205. And I think I speak for all of us when I say we could use a little musical break. It's 7:47 right now. Here's a local artist.
Singles at the woodbine, dancing in a grapevine, taking boys that are not mine. Circling the Goodwill, trying to find a spot that's free. I keep looking until City Hall, Central Park, solid gold. After dark. Running every stop sign, trying to make the garbage hill climb. Red wine by the riverside. Cross the bridge when we get there. Maybe climb the fire escape. Anything to get away. City Hall, Central Park, solid gold. After dark.
A little bit of a musical reprieve. Solid Gold, Diaphany from Winnipeg. Her new EP, by the way, from the same name is out now. If you want to support local music, we hope you do. 11 minutes to 8 o'clock now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Wherever you're joining us, thank you for being here. Well, we are sitting in West Fargo this morning. Last night we were up late, and right around midnight we found ourselves in an Applebee's because we've been kind of going restaurant to restaurant and bar to bar where a lot of the big screens were tuned into the election and various coverage. But a lot of people actually were not wanting to talk publicly last night about how they voted here in North Dakota. That is until we got to, I mentioned, Applebee's just before midnight. Katie and Wyatt Crum were there. They've been watching at the bar. So we moved over, slid into a booth, and before we got to talking politics, they actually shared a bit of a date night tradition.
So this is our third election that we've come to this bar to watch the results come in together. So 2016, 2020, and now 2024.
And so that was because you worked here, right?
Yeah, we just kind of found ourselves here the first time in 2020. We said, well, let's go back where we were last time. And now it's, I think three times is what makes it a tradition, I'm pretty sure.
Super cute. Now, things have changed, though, because you were dating the first time, and now you have kids.
Married and have children, yep. Yeah.
How are you feeling overall? Just like one word for how you're feeling overall about this election, as a North Dakotan.
Anxious.
Okay. And how about you? How have you been feeling about it?
It's close.
I voted for Kamala Harris. Neither of them were a perfect candidate for me, but I feel like what's at stake with a Trump presidency is certainly something that I deem as a risk. And so there are, many freedoms that I feel like Kamala Harris is promising to uphold and in many cases reinstate that I find to be life critical for many individuals, including some individuals that I may know or love.
When you say reinstate, I can't help think Roe v. Wade. I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I am speaking about that. Like, I trust Kamala Harris to do the right thing. One thing that I think is a common theme of this election is, voting on morals versus voting on, personal gain, perhaps. And I think as it relates to personal gain, I feel very fortunate to live in Fargo, North Dakota, which is just right on the border. And so if services aren't available in Fargo, it's not challenging for me to, drive quickly into Minnesota or maybe not me, right? Maybe somebody else that I know or love. But I think where it comes down to voting on morals is voting for every American.
Let's go to the other side of the booth. Who did you vote for?
I care not to disclose.
Okay.
I voted in all the election, a mixed ballot.
Okay.
I picked the best candidate based on the research that I did, and I will admit that this is the first year that I've done really good in-depth research on my candidates.
Tell me a little bit about what tomorrow brings. So we're sitting here, we're waiting for those final results to come in. I've never seen fewer lawn signs in an election. We've been in a lot of different spots in the last couple of days, and folks are saying that, we're going back to preserve relationships. We're not talking politics anymore, sometimes even in families, and also, with neighbors and things like that. But still tomorrow, if this goes close to 50-50 even, you're still living in a country that's got that kind of divide. So what does that go from there? What do you think?
I think we have to wait for the results ultimately. I think no matter what happens, someone's going to be saying that they got cheated out of the election. And we're all prepared for that. I think you'd be ignorant if you weren't thinking that wasn't going to happen again. But ultimately, there will be a winner. and we will deal with the consequences. Like she said, there's not a perfect candidate. You can't pick a candidate right now that is anywhere near the middle. Everyone is super polarized, and it's being pushed that way in every avenue of politics and media. It seems like we're being pushed to be divided and make a decision one way or the other. And really, the two people at this table are middle.
What does not being divided look like?
For me, a very definitive theme of democracy is having, really a healthy level of conflict, conversation, maybe an adversarial relationship with government in general, right? To say, I don't like what's happening and I want it to change. That's at the root of what democracy is. And so I think that would be the message that I hope the outcome of this election kind of brings forward to this divided nation, is to say, this is our leader now. The people have spoken. How can the leader that's selected do right by all of their people, not just the 50.2% that got them elected? Because we know that it's going to come down to nickels and dimes. Unfortunately, like I mentioned at the beginning of this interview, I do feel anxiety right now. That may or may not be, foundationally, realistic for me to be feeling, or right or wrong, I guess is what I'm saying. I do feel anxiety. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump, on numerous occasions in his campaign trail, has referred to American citizens who don't agree with him as the enemy from within. That tells me that I am Donald Trump's enemy. That's terrifying.
I'm looking for some unity in the country, and I'm hoping that the candidate that gets into office will take the time and energy to try and bring the country back together, and work with the opposing party to pass any kind of measure that has bipartisan support. Right now, anything that's bipartisan support gets filibustered or shot down, and it doesn't matter. Whoever has the minority is using our filibusters to stop progressive measures from being moved forward. And in order for this country to move forward, we need to make some decisions on some things and get some people who care.
Mm-hmm. You feel like you've been stalled a little bit, maybe?
Absolutely.
I know why I think that Manitoba, especially we're a couple hours away here, but also Canada is watching. I'm hearing from our listeners and viewers about why they're so interested this year in particular. What's at stake. I'm wondering, from your American point of view, your North Dakota point of view, why you think maybe the world should be paying attention.
I pause and I hesitate because I don't want to buy into sensationalism. Mm-hmm. But I think it's hard not to today. I have reflected over the last couple of weeks long and hard about how effective and prominent propaganda is in American politics today. I picture myself, when I reflect on that, as a child in grade school learning about propaganda being used as a tool, back in the day, and really scoffing and shrugging and raising my eyebrows at how people could be so silly to buy into that, right? But to see it really playing out in the year of our Lord 2024 is why I think the world should be paying attention.
Conversation very late last night when the writing was on the wall for the results. So we're talking there because they hadn't been finalized. But of course, we already sort of were leaning towards understanding that Donald Trump would be reelected here, and he is the president-elect this morning. North Dakota voters Katie and Wyatt Crum. We're going to hear from Manitobans on your perspective, because you are paying attention and writing in like crazy this morning. First, though, let's go to headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. Well, here in Winnipeg, remembering a 28-year-old mother of 4, family and friends of Brianna Close gathered in a vigil downtown last night on the promenade behind Portage Place, the spot where she was found with life-threatening injuries last Thursday. She later died in hospital. And honoring the Honorable Justice Murray Sinclair. Sinclair was a lawyer, judge, senator, and chief commissioner of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He died Monday morning. A public memorial is going to be held at Canada Life Centre at 2 Sunday afternoon. I'll be back with more Manitoba News at 8:30.
Southern Manitoba, fog advisory in effect. Lots of trouble in traffic, much of it due to that. Be careful out there. 788-3093 to update us. It's -1 in Winnipeg. Today's high is 3 degrees. Coming up after 8 o'clock on the program, she was the first black woman to be elected to the Fargo School Board and immigrated to the States after fleeing South Sudan. We'll hear what she thought of last night's result. And our Trump voter will be back to weigh in again. We'll be back.
Today on Q with Tom Power. Jason Reynolds is one of the biggest names in YA fiction. His books take difficult subjects and makes them accessible to kids. Jason Reynolds joins me to talk about the trip to a juvenile detention center that inspired his new book and writing the stories he wishes he had when he was growing up.
And that if I had these books, perhaps they would have been a little less posturing and a little less lying.
That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Well, here we are at the morning after the U.S. election. The Current has full coverage from voters intensely invested on each side to political analysts to look at the law around what happens next. The latest from the U.S. election coming up on The Current.
Young in Toronto.
And I'm John Northcott, outside the State Capitol building in Georgia.
This is a special edition of World Report. Donald Trump will become the next president of the United States of America.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
Trump addressing his supporters at the Palm Beach County Convention Center early this morning. He was surrounded by family on the stage. Trump and the Republican Party have secured 276 electoral votes. 223 votes have gone to Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party.
Wisconsin is the state that tipped Trump over the top. He also won other key swing states, including Pennsylvania and Georgia, where I am this morning. Chris Reyes has more on this historic win.
And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free.
Walking on stage to his signature song, a crowd of thousands at the West Palm Beach Convention Center went wild as Donald Trump claimed victory.
Frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country and maybe beyond.
Trump skipped the insults and the name-calling that's become a signature of his campaign speeches. Instead, he made grand promises.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
On stage, Trump was joined by his entire family, including his wife, his 5 children, and his running mate, J.D. Vance.
After the greatest political comeback in American history, we're going to lead the greatest economic comeback in American history under Donald Trump's leadership.
Earning Trump the biggest applause when he gave credit to God for his big win.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together.
Trump closed his speech by calling on all Americans to join his movement. He did not make a single mention of his opponent, Kamala Harris. Chris Reyes, CBC News, West Palm Beach, Florida.
Kamala Harris was unable to keep some key states blue. She also underperformed in many swing states. Harris's campaign says she will likely address the American people today as she concedes defeat to Donald Trump.
Marcia, last night, a large rally was held at Harris's alma mater in Washington, D.C. CBC's Ashley Burke joins us now from Washington. Ashley, what went wrong for the Harris campaign?
Well, Vice President Kamala Harris's campaign poured huge amounts of money into ads. They aggressively held rallies in battleground states, and they brought in so much star power to help, from Beyonce to Oprah and Lady Gaga, and it wasn't enough. In her closing pitch to voters, Harris offered them a new generation of leadership free of Donald Trump's divisive style of politics and the majority of voters rejected that. It seems that the overwhelming issue voters cared about the most in this election is the economy, the cost of living, and they think Trump is going to make that better for them. Now, it appears Harris also failed to resonate with certain pockets of voters, specifically male voters, and she failed to distance herself from Joe Biden, whose administration has been a target of Trump's campaign when it comes to the economy.
Ashley, those are the overall opinions. What specifically are we hearing from voters?
I'm at Howard University right now, where we were at Harris's campaign watch party last night. You know, it started off as this really energetic event. There were hundreds of students here singing and dancing. They were really optimistic that Harris could make history as one of the first graduates of a historically black college or university to become president. But then as the results started coming in and Trump started taking the lead in many states, the crowd started getting nervous and anxious. And slowly over time, we just saw people lose hope.
All we can do is vote and pray for a change. I think we're going backwards.
For what she stands for and what she's done for us, I think, it speaks volumes.
I guess it kind of just shows me that some people are willing to look at the facts and not face them.
Now we're waiting to see if Harris has called Trump to congratulate him and when she's going to speak this morning and what exactly her message is going to be.
The CBC's Ashley Burke in Washington, D.C. Thanks, Ashley.
You're welcome.
Harris and the Democratic Party had their eye on the swing state of Pennsylvania. It is the battleground of battlegrounds with 19 electoral votes. This time, those coveted seats turned red. Steve Futterman has more from Philadelphia.
The early vote count had Kamala Harris on top, but that was expected. The first votes counted came from early voting, which favored Harris. Soon it became apparent, though, that the Keystone State, which went for Trump in 2016, then went for Joe Biden in 2020, was moving again in Trump's direction. Early this morning, Fox News became the first U.S. network to call the race for Trump.
Is this a call, ladies and gentlemen? We are now projecting that Donald J. Trump will win the state of Pennsylvania, and thereby he is on his way to becoming the 47th president.
At Trump headquarters in Florida, where they were watching the Fox broadcast, there was suddenly a huge roar.
As we look now at
all across the state, Trump improved on his 2020 performance. A key factor was an increase in support among Latino voters. This man we spoke with on Sunday typified Latinos moving towards Trump. He said it was largely because of the economy. Have you ever voted for a Republican?
Right now, it's going to be the first time I'm voting for one.
But you voted for Obama?
I did.
Voted for Hillary Clinton?
Yes.
And voted for Joe Biden?
Yes.
Once again, Pennsylvania helps pave the way to the White House. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Philadelphia.
Abortion also on the ballot in several states last night. In Florida, voters came down in favor of keeping the ban on abortion after the first 6 weeks of pregnancy. Initiatives to protect the right to an abortion were struck down in Nebraska and South Dakota, but Missouri, Arizona, Colorado, Maryland, Montana, and Nevada all adopted an amendment to enshrine abortion rights. And New Yorkers voted in favor of banning discrimination on the basis of pregnancy outcomes.
John, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is congratulating Trump on his win. This morning, Trudeau and his Liberal caucus will meet to discuss the results of the U.S. election and how to work with the Trump administration. For more, let's go to Janice McGregor in our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, this is all something Trudeau's cabinet has experience with.
That's right, Marcia. Look, in 2016, the election of Donald Trump threw Justin Trudeau's cabinet off guard. Not this time. Chrystia Freeland was out earlier this week reassuring Canadians that they've maintained good relationships on both sides of the aisle in Washington. She was dining with her former and perhaps again counterpart, Bob Lighthizer, earlier this year. Melanie Joly also told us yesterday she's been talking to other foreign ministers, preparing to coordinate their response to the change. And listen to the way Innovation Minister François-Philippe Champagne was describing Canada-U.S. relations yesterday.
What we've been focusing on is moving from just like the friendly neighbor of the North to a strategic partner.
But being a good partner in Donald Trump's world all comes down to deal making. International trade lawyer Mark Warner, who practices on both sides of the border, told me he thinks the key for Canada is seeing this relationship as transactional.
If we treat this as a negotiation and where you barter some, you back, I think he's manageable.
So in this second Trump presidency, what will he want to negotiate?
This guy's priorities have not changed. He's obsessed with the border, immigration issues. Militarily, he will not tolerate free riders. If allies want protection, they're going to have to pull their weight. And his industrial policy is set to once again go after China, everything focused on bringing jobs back to America, regardless of what the economists say about the potential cost to the North American economy of levying big new tariffs. Todd Tucker, the Director for Industrial Policy and Trade with Roosevelt Forward in Washington, warns that Canada should expect a hostile reaction if it's not prepared to get in line.
So I think the administration is going to use the possibility of a USMCA renegotiation to weaponize any of these issues and to sort of put negotiating partners on the back foot.
When trade wars escalate, it creates exactly the kind of uncertainty that businesses hate. It holds back investment, holds back growth. But weaponized uncertainty is Trump's superpower. That's where his leverage comes from.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Janice McGregor reporting from Ottawa.
And before we go, our top story, Donald Trump will be the next president of the United States. He has won 276 electoral college votes. The Democrats sit at 223, and some states are still counting. That is the latest news from World Report. I'm John Northcott, outside the State Capitol building in Atlanta, Georgia.
And I'm Marcia Young. This is CBC News.
We're good till the 10? Is that the call?
Where, all my friends are Democrats. I don't really have very many friends that are Republicans. I think that's too bad. I wish we were able to, kind of all hang out a little bit better. But it's just how it is right now. And I mean, I was 16 when Trump ran for the first time, so I wasn't able to vote against him. Otherwise, I would have. But it's been kind of interesting. My whole adult life is this weird little political division.
So that was one of the voters that we talked to. We're in West Fargo here this morning. That was someone talking last night. Interesting to hear how people are acknowledging that they're not really even engaging with those that have other points of view because of what has been happening in politics. Well, this morning, we know that Donald Trump will be the next U.S. president. He was reelected here last night. We have more special coverage. We're going to talk to a North Dakotan who lives here in West Fargo. We're broadcasting at Randy's Diner 2 this morning. And he voted for Trump last night, so we're going to hear more about that. He also is a former Winnipegger, so we'll get that point of view from him about where he thinks things are going next as we move forward and how to bring those who did not vote for Trump last night into the fold. So more on how to heal divides. Also, we're going to meet some of the folks that are having breakfast here in the cafe and have been brave and gracious enough to sit down, and they're going to talk to us about their thoughts on the election as well. So stay tuned, lots ahead. Plus, your calls and your comments from Manitoba, because I'm on this side of the border, but back at home, sure we're all leaning in. So we're going to hear why and what specifically you're concerned about and what you're thinking about this morning as well overall. All right, Heather Wells has some of that reflected in her news and also some more results. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Yes, well, in Winnipeg, we're talking about residential school survivors, remembering the Honorable Justice Murray Sinclair. He died on Monday. Among his many groundbreaking roles was Chief Justice of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We're going to hear from Grandma Shingoose, who says Sinclair had a way to make the survivors feel comfortable in sharing their personal stories of trauma. The Brandon Westman Christmas Cheer Board says it doesn't have enough space for all the hamper requests it's getting this year, and it expects to pack a record number of at least 1,500 holiday hampers, but their headquarters can only hold 1,100. We'll hear what they hope happens coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Sorry, Heather, I set you up to talk about U.S. election because that's all that's on my mind this morning. But I will tell you this. I reflected on Murray Sinclair on my Facebook page yesterday. I couldn't help but do that. I just want to say on the air, obviously what a loss. And as people continue to think about his legacy, he was just so gracious, just speaking personally for a moment, with me as a journalist. Yeah. I mean, as a young journalist, before I was a journalist, I wrote a paper in university on the AJI, which of course, he co-authored. And when I got to interview him, when I was covering the TRC hearings when I was pretty young at CBC, I was so nervous walking in to tackle this. And immediately He just made it feel like an exchange of ideas, helping understand. It was about building and learning, and I don't know. I left feeling somehow stronger, and he was just all about people engaging in a relationship. I'm not being very eloquent this morning, but he did. He lifted us up in so many of our darkest moments in Manitoba and across the country. So, yeah, all the best to condolences to him and his family.
Yeah, I saved actually a quote of Maurice Sinclair's in my workspace, and he talked about Truth and Reconciliation being a dance, and he says when you're dancing, you actually have to touch each other, and so we need to get that close and figure it out.
I love that. I think the world might need that this morning, actually. Yeah. Speaking of what we're talking about, we sure have been hearing the word divisiveness a lot here down south this morning. All right, thank you.
You're
Thank you. Beautifully shared. All right. So if you want to share as well, I know some of you have already been sharing about Maurice Sinclair over the last couple of days, but please keep those comments coming about his legacy. You can go on my Facebook page if you'd like. Let's go to what is happening right now in our weather forecast and also cover a very busy morning in foggy traffic. Abby.
Yeah, we're looking at light snow in the north and freezing fog down south, and this will be affecting commute this morning. Zero still in Winnipeg. Fog advisory in effect. It's affecting commute this morning in the southern part of the province and is expected to clear up as we get into the morning, which should improve visibility. But for now, anyone driving, please take extra care. Visibility may suddenly drop to near zero. For Winnipeg today, we're heading to a high of 3. Currently, Thompson is at -3, Churchill -3, seeing light snow. Foggy conditions down south, as mentioned earlier, and that is making commutes very, very, difficult for some people. Winnipeg and surrounding areas will be seeing this fog, so please use extra caution while you're driving. Reduce your speed, and roads are slippery. We hear that on Highway 59, there's a closure there due to more like a crash between the town of Birds Hill and Gavin Road. We hear that the RCMP is on site controlling traffic, but if you can find an alternate route, that is currently blocked at this time. Manitoba Highways also says there's been a crash southbound perimeter near Russell Road that is the left lane closed. So if you have an alternative route, you should also take that. And then Fred called to say westbound Dogold Road and the perimeter is moving very slow. He says it's foggy. You need to be careful. And the last one from Craig in Ildershan, he says the fog is so thick, and I quote him here, you could cut it with a knife. Mercy. That's what he said.
That sounds really nasty. I'll tell you, we have quite a decent morning here. We even had some sunshine in Fargo yesterday after a couple gloomy days. So out the window in West Fargo, though, we have a bit of cloud. But be careful in that fog and call Abby if you need 788-3093. Well, as I mentioned, we're live in West Fargo, and if you've been down to Fargo before, there's Fargo, there's West Fargo, there's Moorhead nearby in another state, but sort of the whole area proper has some 230,000 plus voters. And last night, those voters were part of the national picture in the re-election of Donald Trump. Having breakfast here this morning is Sue Ellen, who's originally actually from Minnesota, and says she didn't vote last night, and she's going to share a little bit about that. Hi, Sue Ellen. How are you?
Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
So how do you normally vote? Like in the past, or do you identify with either of the parties?
I do, Democrat.
Okay.
And I grew up mostly Democratic, with lots of different views and a lot of politicians around me.
Okay. So, and last night, though, as I mentioned, you didn't vote. Why not?
I'm very torn due to we are in a red state, and I don't I can't really associate myself out here or to many people about what is happening in the world and the concerns.
So did you feel like you didn't want to be identified because you live in a red state?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't feel like my vote would actually count as much because we are in a red state, and I feel like if we can't talk about it, and even the vote, I don't feel like the vote's that important.
Can I ask you how old you are? I'm just trying to give our radio audience a sense of sort of your history, and you talked about in the past supporting Democrats, so it's obviously not your first vote, a chance to vote.
I was December 8th, 1987.
Okay. So you are, you're how old? I
Thir-
don't
no,
math
it's
well.
okay. 36.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
How does it make you feel? Like, as a 36-year-old
Yeah.
woman that has
And
voted in the past, that you felt kept from the polls in part because of not just the results here, which were overwhelming for Republicans last night. 70-30, I think, was about the split. But that you had some trepidation about identifying what you think and what you believe.
It's concerning. It's I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I get it. I didn't vote, but
yeah,
it's hard to explain.
Yeah.
It really, it's.
What does President-elect Donald Trump need to do to make you feel, for you moving forward? Last night he said, his quote was, and I'm not going to quote it exactly because I've lost my page, but I did write it down earlier, and here it is. I'm here for every citizen to have a safe and prosperous America. Those are quotes from his speech last night.
I disagree. I personally feel like he's dividing us as Americans.
So part of the division you're feeling here, even in North Dakota, you lay at the feet of him.
Yes, I do. I feel like part of it is he's splitting the not just politics. It's the racial. It's lots of different things that I want us to come together as Americans, not to be torn apart with all this turmoil and stuff.
Yeah, and I don't even know how to ask this, but for the sake of the radio audience that can't see us this morning, do you identify with why do you identify with you said dividing the country also along race lines in some ways?
It's I'm originally from Brazil, and I was adopted from Brazil, and I come from lots of different walks of life, from Sweden to German to all different African Americans. Most of my family is all mixture from different walks, and I don't want to look back and be like I was hated on or disliked because I was from a different country. I was raised in the United States, but it's just hard to tell your children and our future all what's happening,
I don't want to rush to the end of our conversation, so I'm just going to simply ask you, is there anything you want to add this morning as you're making sense of your election results in your country last night?
I'm scared for our future. I'm scared for our young generation of educators who go to college and who wonder what we're supposed to do with our future, and the human rights and the lots of different other things, education,
Thank you for having the courage to speak with us this morning.
You're very welcome.
We appreciate you. And let this be hopefully a step toward, somehow unification everywhere. It's 8:22 a.m. We're live. We're in West Fargo this morning. This is Sue Ellen Madden, who's been speaking to us this morning, originally from Minnesota, identifies as a Democrat, but as you heard, for lots of reasons, I didn't vote last night. This is a red state, and also had some nerves about sharing some of her political views. Everyone's going to be talking about them today, though, I think, because we're moving forward. There is a president-elect here, Donald Trump. In a moment, we're going to hear from someone here in North Dakota who voted for him. But not before we hear, actually, from a a Canadian who, of all of the things last night, right around midnight, walks into the Applebee's where Corey and I are talking to Americans about the election, wearing a shirt that says Canada, apparently had taken a photo of our CBC vehicle out in the parking lot. Where are you from, Katie Kerr?
I'm from Barrie, Ontario.
What are you doing in North Dakota?
I'm working here as a travel nurse.
And why are you doing that? Tell me a little bit about I know you have a sense of adventure a little bit, right?
Yeah. So when I graduated nursing school, I really wanted to be a travel nurse. That wasn't really a defined role in Canada yet, pre-pandemic. So the U.S. kind of was where it was beckoning to me. Plus, we have such a great relationship with America that I just felt it would be such a great adventure to do in my younger years. Of course, as you're aware, Donald Trump was originally elected in 2016, so that was 2 years into my career. I kind of put a little bit of a break to that adventure initially because I didn't know what that was going to look like. Plus, the sentiment of recruitment changed quite considerably of Canadians. I noticed when I'd go and speak with recruiters and stuff, there was a bit of a different vibe that I was getting about like how encouraged they were to bring Canadians, and I didn't know if that was that they felt more able to voice how they felt.
So how are you feeling this morning, given that you are here? I understand you have no plans to become a citizen. You did want Harris to win last night.
Correct.
But why was that for you?
Well, I'm a woman. So I'm a 36-year-old woman, actually, just like our previous guest. Yeah. Reproductive rights is on the table. And as we talked last night at Applebee's when I was talking to other patrons, in Canada, that's not even a question because of the way our Healthcare Act works. We don't need to get into that if you don't want to. But yeah, for me, it's I just feel like how can you elect a felon over a woman if do you hate women that much that's where you're going to go with this election? That's kind of the sentiment I'm feeling this morning. Like, I don't understand.
Katie, thank you for being here with us this morning and for making time to come down and talk to us at both ends. Midnight last night and then this morning. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Katie Kerr, bumped into her here. She's originally from Ontario. She's a nurse working here in Fargo and joining us here live at Randy's Diner 2 at West Fargo. Time right now is 8:25 a.m. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. On the app or on YouTube this morning. Well, what an interesting half hour of conversation this has been. I just want to mention that some of our people that we were expecting here this morning, you might have heard me talking about some stories. They were unable to join us. So, but David Chapman has been very, very patient with us because we had him on last hour and he's been listening in and here. David Chapman is originally from Winnipeg. He lives here in West Fargo. He works as a lawyer. He voted for Trump last night and he feels hopeful today and really good about the result. But David, what's it like for you? You've been sitting here hearing from people that are not only not hopeful, but some of them scared as fellow North Dakotans to you to even like voice how they feel as Democrats.
Well, I think that the rhetoric was ramped up from both sides during the election, and I think one of the biggest challenges we have now is unity in this country, and kind of toning down the rhetoric and dialing it back a bit, and remembering that the leadership in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, that's not the regular voter. Democrats are our neighbors, and we have to remember that when we go forward, the way that we talk to people and the way that we discuss the issues. I did hear there was concerns over, reproductive rights. Federally, nothing's going to happen on that. I do not believe that falls within the purview of the federal government.
But in North Dakota, it's already like, overturning Roe v. Wade already affected North Dakota, where they had the abortion ban, and it was appealed, and presumably it now will go to a higher court and could come back and state it. So it is affecting women here.
Well, it could, yes, it could in a state basis, but really in the United States, the way that the government is set up is it is not a one federal country like Canada. It is a much weaker federal government. That was what was intended, and it was a conglomeration of smaller states, primarily for trade and defense is why they formed the country.
I'm wondering, you're talking about moving forward and healing divide. That's been a big theme this morning. Do you feel like Donald Trump, the person you supported, right, and obviously the president-elect, how confident are you that he will change his tone to be able to be part of healing that divide? Because in fairness, I mean, when you run on ads that talk about they, them being the other, and there's transgender people walking around North Dakota this morning, I can't imagine what they're feeling like. If you're in a family who, has a family where maybe even you have a great grandmother who lives with you in the house, but maybe she crossed the border and it wasn't through, legal channels, but maybe she had generations of people that have, and now the whole family's worried that, the great grandma's going to be part of this large mass deportation. How confident are you that Donald Trump will somehow be able to make those citizens of the country and your friends and neighbors too, the people that you live with in your neighborhoods here, feel included, feel supported by this president?
Right. Well, I think that going forward in terms of crossing the border in the future, I think that, we need to build the wall. We need to finish it. We need to enforce the law. It's actually a crime in the United States under 8 U.S.C. Section 1325 to cross the border at a place other than where it's designated. And it has always defied logic for me that when you want to live in a country, you make your first act breaking the law in that country. And yes, there are a lot of people here that have been here for a long time. I think what we were seeing last night was a lot of the media opinions that the view in the American public is there has to be a path for those people to permanent residence. And it can't be a path like what President Obama chose, which was the DACA program.
Should there be a path then? Are you talking about for the people that have been here for a long time, but like the great-grandma example?
Yes.
Do you think there should be?
I think there should be. Yes, there should be, because they've established ties to the community. It's partly the fact that they weren't caught. Is one part of it, but we can't change the fact that they've established ties here.
Does the enemy within comment from President-elect Donald Trump concern you at all?
The comments about enemies within and the rhetoric that goes on, I don't cater to that kind of talk. And consistently, I've got friends who are Democrats and Republicans, and things get heated, and I'm continuously saying, let's dial it back.
I know we're going to the news. One last quick question. We started this morning by you saying that you were, hopeful, and also saying that the economy was the big issue. What's the biggest positive thing that you're hoping will come out of President-elect Trump's victory last night economically for your country?
I think economically getting a handle on inflation, and also we won't hear any more talk about unrealized capital gains taxes, which, I can't imagine why that would be equitable or fair to tax money that people have not received yet. That sort of thing is going to change from him in terms of going forward. I also think the issue of trade. They talked a lot about tariffs during this election, but they didn't talk about the fact that the Biden administration kept all the Trump tariffs. They didn't get rid of any of the ones that they put in place.
We'll be watching that closely, of course, from Canada. I know we're a bit late to the news, but we're grateful you've been with us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is David Chapman. Used to live in Winnipeg, moved here just after 9/11. In fact, lives here in West Fargo, and he works here as a lawyer. And now to your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it is 0. Got a little bit of fog out there. That fog will dissipate late this morning. A high today of 3. Donald Trump has officially reclaimed the White House. Trump becomes the 47th U.S. president with 276 electoral votes, outdistancing Democratic candidate Kamala Harris. 270 were needed for victory. Trump declared himself the winner early this morning.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again.
Kamala Harris was unable to keep some key states blue. She also underperformed in many swing states. Harris's campaign says she will likely address the American people today as she concedes defeat to Donald Trump. Now, North Dakota keeps its status as a red state, going to Donald Trump last night. And as our Ian Fraze found, people in our neighboring state are happy with the election results.
Here in downtown Fargo, where I am, it's a beautiful place. The state itself is a major agricultural hub and a major energy producer, and they want to be respected as such. I spoke to a political scientist who says that, people here feel the Republican Party, and now Donald Trump is their defender, someone who can protect their rural way of life. And that's why they keep voting for Republicans again and again. I was at an election party last night with Republicans where I spoke to a Trump supporter, Ken Tanner. He and others acknowledged that, hey, Trump's inflammatory rhetoric isn't for everyone, but they like his policies. And more people in North Dakota are willing to admit that, hey, they like the guy.
Trump supporters are getting braver and braver and braver. Used to be you had to kind of like hold your head down for someone was going to hit you with something, but not so much anymore.
So overall, from him and others, it's more about the policies rather than the person.
CBC's Ian Fraze in Fargo. In other news today, remembering a 28-year-old mother of 4. Family and friends of Brianna Close raising their voices in a vigil downtown on the promenade behind Porter's Place. Close was found there suffering from life-threatening injuries on the afternoon of October 31st. That was Thursday. She later died in hospital. Cassandra Flett is the aunt of one of Close's sons. She says the former healthcare aide was kind, generous, and dreamed of traveling with her children.
Her cheeky smile that she always had and the glint in her eyes, and I see that in her son every day, and the teasing nature, and it's definitely something that we're going to miss.
32-year-old Ryan John Kennedy is charged with second-degree murder. Residential school survivors are honoring the memory of Murray Sinclair. Many visited the sacred fire in front of the Manitoba Legislative Building to remember the former judge, senator, and commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Grandma Geraldine Shingoose says Sinclair had a way to make survivors feel comfortable in sharing their personal stories of trauma.
All I could feel from him during the TRC and even after is that love for his family, but also for the people in the community and the nations. And he just wanted to make things right, okay? He just wanted to bring that truth out.
A public visitation will be held today at the Kaboto Centre between 10 and 2. A public memorial for Sinclair will be held at the Canada Life Centre this Sunday. And today, you can sign a book of condolence at the Manitoba Legislature at the base of the Grand Staircase. And you can find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks very much, Heather.
You're welcome.
Also, big thanks to Corey Funk, to Leif Larson, Abby Adeyemi, Kevin Nipatebo, to Heather Wells, as I just mentioned, and to Megan Ketchison and Joni Nicolo in our news center, and to our hardworking team of associate producers, as well as our leaders in unit. Leif Larson, who, as you heard, is also up early directing and this morning and was here late last night as well, and Nellie Gonzalez as well, our producers in unit. Huge thanks to Heidi Rogenkamp as well for having us here live all morning in West Fargo at Randy's Diner too, and to all of the people who went on air with us this morning. We certainly appreciate it. And thanks to Manitoba for writing to us as well. Tomorrow and the next day, we're going to have to pick up some of the comments that are coming in. There's so many, I didn't get to them all. All right, Abby, take the last minute here because traffic has been a real deal.
Yeah, traffic has been a real deal. Crash on northbound Perimeter Highway at Femer on the overpass. Even cold traffic line says outside the city on Dogold Road heading westbound towards the perimeter. It's absolutely crawling. Manitoba Highway says crash on Highway 59, totally affecting turnoff to the town of Birds Hill and Gavin Road. Just take it easy out there. It's foggy, it's slippery. We're looking at a high of 3 today, but before we get there, during your commute, please take it easy.
All right, thanks very much, Abby, and big thanks to you for tuning in this morning to our special broadcast live from the States. Much more to analyze today, and of course, we also expect to hear from Kamala Harris today. She has not yet spoken publicly, so stay tuned. The Current is coming up next on CBC 89.3. Goodbye from America.